Shall we begin with the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think everybody knew the words. All right, where do we begin? We begin with our, do we begin with the last minutes?
Emergency modifications.
Do we have any emergency modifications?
We have none.
And we move on to, this is my first official presidency. I'm just getting the hang of it. The approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I have one comment on the list of board members. So last year, usually the newest board member starts at the bottom, but I thought through it, I was fine with Shelley being above me, but I don't always want to be the last one.
Yeah.
I
Alphabetical,
I think
sorry.
it's
well, no, but it's never been alphabetical.
The last two members are alphabetical, but we could certainly switch it up.
I would like to rotate with everybody else.
It's that W thing, isn't it?
It's always been a thing, hasn't it?
Here I am president, now I've got a crisis.
I'm a
I was
troublemaker.
totally unprepared for
I've
this.
always been a troublemaker.
I don't think, I'm
We
sure
will be sure to have you on
I'm
Jane.
sure that can be fixed.
Move.
Second. Do we have a second?
Oh, I second it with,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None opposed. Approval of the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from, I think we have two sets of minutes from December.
November 7th and December
you.
14th.
I move to approve those.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. And we hear now from our student representative, Lauren Raymond.
At Nordhoff, our November food drive run in coordination with help of Ojai's Community Assistance Program was a huge success. We brought in almost 2,300 cans, which was double the number of cans we brought in last year. Leadership is in the midst of planning January's Winter Spirit Week, rally, and morph dance. At Chaparral, their environmental science students released their trout fry before the break and will be visiting the Ojai Meadow Preserve as part of their study of the Ventura River watershed. Chaparral students visited Ventura College in October, and then Ventura College counselors came into CHS to help students complete applications in math and English placement tests. Students are now prepared to sign up for courses in the spring or summer. They'll be touring Cal State Channel Islands, and hospitality students will be visiting Oxnard College to learn about their culinary program. After the winter break, Chaparral will host a series of industry-specific forums, allowing students to explore a variety of pathways and opportunity. Miramani had their food drive competition, which multi-grade teams were competing to bring in the most food. Matilha completed their first trimester. Students who were enrolled in the new Pathways elective will now switch from the film class to drama. Their PTO fundraiser was very successful, and these next 2 weeks the PTO will be rewarding their top sellers with a limo trip to In-N-Out Burger and a Games on Wheels playtime. Miners Oaks, the week before Thanksgiving break, was a parent conference week. Teachers had an opportunity to meet with the families of students and update them on their students' progress. At Summit School, the entire school is studying climate. The primary class is specifically studying the science behind winter weather. This theme is part of the new ELA curriculum and includes projects, activities, and writing. The 3rd through 6th grade class is studying climate change and its effect. Students have learned how sand crabs adapt to the climate change. The study will culminate in a classroom mural depicting the watershed and continuing on to the ocean. San Antonio had a very successful parent-teacher conference week with nearly 100% participation. During the parent-teacher conference week, PTO sponsored a family book night at the book fair, where students shopped for books and families had the option of a hot dog dinner. They had a good turnout and parents and students alike had a great time. San Antonio students completed over 260 holiday cards for a local nonprofit organization The cards will be sent to troops who are away from their families during the holiday season. The students enjoyed writing notes of encouragement and expressing their gratitude to their service members. In Miss Bevo's class, students continue to work on their novels for National Novel Writing Month. Some of the 5th and 6th grade students have written over 20,000 words so far. In January, they will begin editing the novels in preparation for publishing the books for an authentic global audience on Amazon. Students visited the Wolf Museum of Innovation and Exploration in Santa Barbara as part of San Antonio's STEM program, actually. Here, students practiced the design model and engineered model cars and mobiles while learning about STEM careers. Students had a fabulous time and came back energized for continuing their STEAM studies. In November, Ms. Colborn's class had a day of harvest celebrations, where students made necklaces with beads and shells and learned about how Native Americans used beads for trading. Students planted corn Squanto's way by putting fish under the seeds for fertilizer. Students made fish and used them for fishing in a pond. Parents and students made cornbread, homemade cranberries, and butter. Students finished the day with paper animal hides where they used natural symbols to tell a story. On Saturday, December 2nd, San Antonio had a very successful Saturday school with over 50 students attending. It was a great afternoon.
Thank you. Now, we have, as a board, sent the word out that we would be happy to hear from Nordhoff's representative on any other issues that you guys think we should know about, or you wanted to talk about positive, negative, anything you want. Do you have anything this time?
There's no issues we have now,
Okay.
but if there are any, we will take them.
Okay. All right, now you're in leadership, right?
Yeah.
And what's your position?
I am senior vice president.
Well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
I don't know if anyone has any comments, questions?
No, I just, would absolutely invite any comments you have about, positions we're taking, personal attacks, whatever.
Thank you.
We really hope you guys watch these, because they're fascinating on video. Most of the time, the representative leaves now, and you're welcome to do that too. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have two speakers, starting with Kara Hooper.
Hi, I am Kara Hooper. I'm a parent of a San Antonio 5th grader and a Matilha 7th grader, and I just wanted to take a moment to publicly thank the Ojai Unified, I always get cheery, the Ojai Unified School District leadership for their excellent communication during the fire. There were times when our citizenship in the town, I think, felt that we weren't getting a lot of information, but that was never the case with the OUSD. As parents, we were kept up to date throughout every moment as to whether school was happening, whether school wasn't happening. We all appreciated the efforts to try to have some childcare, which didn't end up working out, but the fact that the district was really thinking about that and recognizing that parents needed childcare was so helpful, and they went on to go ahead and make sure that there were lunches provided for those who needed them, all the way through to last night with the floods. So just a huge thank you, and for the creativity you used to get that information out through different channels, whether it was using Facebook, PTO groups. We noticed, and we thank you.
Thank you. I think this is really to Andy and Cheryl and the rest of the leadership and the principals and all of the administrators. We've said it and we'll continue to say it. You guys did a fabulous job. And also the decisiveness, I think, was really appreciated. I think other districts kind of let things malinger, and this district made some early, clear decisions, let everybody know, allowed people to get out of town, which was very helpful.
And if I could add, as much as parents and teachers and everybody were notified, it seemed like we were kept abreast of what was going on real time throughout everything.
Yeah, when you kept calling me last night and going like, still no water. I mean, beyond the Call of Duty, but we know how much you guys are doing behind the scenes, and it's really appreciated. We have another comment from, and this is the portion of our proceedings where anyone is able to comment on any subject dealing with the school district. Doesn't have to be on the agenda. We obviously have two people, but if there's anyone else who'd want to say anything after this, that's fine as well. Steve Weed.
I don't know what to say right now because I'm a little disappointed. You know, Jane Wheel has shown a lot of leadership in this board in the last year, and all she gets is this stinking certificate, and she's not even here. So what do I do?
Well, this is a distinguished service award for Jane Wilde from the,
And I probably misspelled the name. I did.
No, you
on
got
the
it
side.
right.
Did I? Yeah. So short story is are only two speakers here, and we're both going to say the same thing in different fashion. It's been quite a year. You know, the board in the district has really faced a lot of challenges, and I would just second the notion that you not only have you survived, you've done the right thing, and you're still here, you're still standing. So my heart goes out to you guys for the effort that you put out. I really surreptitiously came here to roast Kevin because I know he's not very good at leading groups of discussions, and I just wanted to season him correctly. I wish you and all the new leadership of the board the best. You know, Andy, we've had conversations off and on this year, and I especially value what you brought to this district. So I'm going to go home and work on homework again. But I'll watch for the rest of the meeting because I want to see what you're going to say too. Okay. Thank you so much, people.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Steve.
each and every one of you. Kathy, you're not forgotten either. We know you run this show.
Then, thank you.
we'll get this to Jane Wilde, who unfortunately can't be here tonight.
I'll make sure she gets it.
And now, at long last, we're going to hear from John Hoy, the long-delayed presentation regarding the fabulous Steel Magnolias production last year and their trip to Nebraska and everything else associated with it.
Yes, thank you so much. So grateful to be here. Sorry about the delay, but thank you also again so much for the month of disaster support that we had. It was just fantastic. I'm not going to speak much. I've directed them to give you brief remarks, so hopefully they hold themselves accountable to that. But we had a great time. Have a couple of souvenirs for you. We have some playbills for the district to peruse. Don't worry, I have about 500 of these, so you do whatever you will at the end of that. And we have a couple of features in a national magazine, so that was also from the presentation. So,
And
with-
John, before they speak, could you just put this all in context? Because probably a lot of
Right.
people don't know what we're talking about. But
Yeah.
it's your big trip.
So we were selected as one of 8 schools to present in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we had the job of raising about $22,000 within 4 or 5 months, and we did it. So thank you so much for your help, but also thank you for the community for your help as well. It was fantastic, and it was kind of life-changing, as they'll tell you about. I'm going to film it from the side so they can share with you what they said. So I'll just step aside. We'll just do that way.
Wait, do you still want me to give my opening remark, or did you give it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with your names, please.
Okay. My name is Sofia Erlich. I'm a senior at Nordhoff. The Nordhoff drama department and the cast and crew of Steel Magnolias would like to say thank you to the district and to the community for your help and support through our journey to ITF. So I'm going to talk about something that this whole process helped I learned, and my goal, and when I'm applying for colleges right now, so when I leave high school, my goal is to go into the entertainment industry, either as an actress or someone behind the scenes. And ITF and the whole process of just going to ITF really helped me as an actress mature in the sense that I had to keep a show for several months, memorized and everything, and then there was breaks, and then I did another show, like in between that, I did the musical, so what was just really helpful is learning how to have something memorized for so long and then being able to develop and grow from where you started in October to June. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Hoy, and I'm a sophomore at Nordhoff. This is actually my first drama production at Nordhoff. And basically, it was, as Hoy said, it was pretty life-changing. We learned many things, but one of the things we learned that really stuck with me was that no matter like what we watched, we got to watch a lot of different productions that came as well. We learned that we actually at Nordhoff were not that far off from what you think of when you think of a good production, which like you never, as an actor, you never really know. You have a feeling, but it was really just reassuring, the whole experience. So.
Hi, I'm Giovanna Nava. I'm a junior at Nordhoff High School, and we're very appreciative of the district and the community, but we're also very appreciative of the parents who supported us nonstop and were just there completely along the way. And Sophie's mother, who chaperoned in Nebraska with us, and my parents, who drove the set 1,500 miles back and forth. And we are just very appreciative of their constant support and the constant support of the community and of the district. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Aubrey Schumacher. I'm a senior at Nordhoff. And I like to joke and say that, like, if theater doesn't work out, or like, so I don't plan on going into the entertainment industry like many of my castmates. I want to go into medicine. But we all joke and say, like, if that doesn't work out, I can just be a doctor on Grey's Anatomy. Because at least I have that acting experience. And I just wanted to, like, make a note of how far I've come, like, since being a freshman, starting in drama, going all 4 years staying in the theater department. And as a freshman, I kind of forced myself to take the class to, like, break myself out of that shell. And I think it worked. I think I'm a lot more, I guess, like, confident, and I kind of found myself in theater. And although I didn't, like, grow very much in height, because I'm still a solid 5 foot even, I grew a lot just as a person in general and, like, with a personality. So I just wanted to thank the community for giving Nordhoff the opportunity to have such a strong theater department. Even though, like, we're pretty small, like, we came a long way. And when we were at ITF and people asked, like, oh, where are you from? We're like, oh, Ojai. They're like, oh, Ohio? We're like, no, Ojai. And so it was just, like, a really great experience to, like, get our name out there. And, yeah, I just want to thank everyone for giving us that opportunity.
Hello. My name is Kirsten Poi, and I'm a recent graduate of Nordhoff High School, and I'm currently actively pursuing a career in theater and in acting. So I kind of gained that from being a part of the Nordhoff Drama Department for 4 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what it was like to take a show on the road, because I don't think any of us have ever experienced that kind of process before. And I think it was a lot of self-generated progress that had to be done, like not only as actors but also as like people who would go out in the community and fundraise, and that was all thanks to you guys and to many other wonderful and giving donors and people within our community. And we kind of started our show, and we thought it was like pretty good. We were like, oh, it's pretty good. And we put it up in October, I think, right? December. We put it up in December. They're kind of the same thing, but and it was this beautiful, wonderful show that we were very connected to. But we found out in January that we got selected, and we were like, oh my gosh, like we have to redo this, and we have to raise money and keep these people alive. And then we put up the show again in April, and it was something new, but it was bigger and different and better. And then when we got to Nebraska, it actually had been 9 months since we first started rehearsals. And there's a funny little thing we figured out. So our show we performed on June 21st, and in the show the character Shelby has a baby, and it gets born on June 21st.
Actually,
her due date was June 21st. But so it was kind of cool. We kind of joked that over this process we kind of like had this show, and it was our baby, and we got to like give it away to the world on June 21st. And so that was all thanks to you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erin Snett. I'm a senior at Nordhoff, and I think it's a general understanding that life can mirror art, and art can also mirror life. And in thinking about Steel Magnolias and the message it provides, and in really delving into the text as we did for 9 months, I learned a lot about myself. And I learned how to grow as a person, and especially emotionally, because I've had just some traumatic life experience, and it's hard as a young person to go through that. So to learn such wise lessons from a play has really changed me as a person, and I'm, God, forever grateful for that. And it couldn't have been possible, my growth and all of our learning, development, excellence, if you will, without your generosity, the generosity of the community. It's been amazing. So we just want to thank you.
And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say one, I think most of us saw it. It was fabulous. And having people come before a school board from a school district and be as articulate and passionate and interesting and unique as each of you guys is really a tribute to our school district, and thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
So now we move to insights into 3 new elementary school programs and single plans for student achievement for Miners Oaks, Miramonte, San Antonio, Summit, and Topa Topa.
That's right. So I'm actually going to be giving this over to Cheryl here real quick, just for those in the audience and reminders to the board. This is a state-required process that we must go through to have these single site plans approved by you. However, it was about 3 years ago we decided that instead of just having what is a very important but somewhat dry document come before you, that we take this as a real opportunity to celebrate and share some of the exciting programs taking place across our campuses. And so tonight we have, I see a few teachers and a number of kiddos who are here who are going to share with you 3 of these programs that are new to the elementary level this year. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Cheryl take it over.
Okay, so just a reminder, the SIPSA, the school site plan, is meant to be a blueprint to how we're going to improve academic achievement in each one of our schools. And it also aligns with our LCAP. So our LCAP is our district plan, and then our site plans, of course, should align to the district plan as we have this cohesive goal. Each goal is meant to be tracked over time, so it's not expected that you would change the goals very often. They're typically the same goals from year to year, and you'd see that to be true in our LCAP as well. But when we see that we're not meeting our goals over time, we really do look at our action items in our plans, and we work together as a team, as administrators. We work with our teachers, we work with our parents through our school site councils and other groups, and then we also, in some cases, bring in students, and we talk about what kind of actions we might want to change. So you might see some enhancements, you might see some deletions, and you'll see some new things, which we're going to be sharing today, some of the new things. But I do want to say before we start with the new things that we've added to our elementary program that there is one important goal that we as an administrative team have, and that is when you do look in our SIPSA plans, you will see that we have over the years referred to using data to drive instruction, data-driven instruction, and we have really been looking at that and realizing that that is an area that we need to really improve the implementation of that. So we are working very hard on that. We're having a lot of conversations among the administration. It's not something that you're going to see showcased here tonight, but we do want you to know that that is something that is actively happening behind the scenes.
Could you give an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is we are having conversations with teachers about what it means to actually really use data to drive instruction and what kind of data you might pull together. We do have a meeting with our 5th grade team in the next week already? Oh my goodness. Where we've actually done some of the work to bring together assessments that we could use to actually really systematically track students and how they're mastering standards so that we can be really systematic about how we intervene when they're not meeting the standards. So it's about, we do these things, but if you're not doing it systematically, there can be a lot of pitfalls, which is what we're finding that we have right now. So.
Would it always be oriented towards testing and mastery of academic skills? Could there be data concerning tardiness, concerning...
Absolutely.
other disruptive issues, things like that?
Our focus definitely for this year is mostly academic, but certainly using any data to be the driver of decision making, including social emotional data, that sort of stuff would absolutely be the heart and soul of what we want to work on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, one of the things that you're going to see us working on throughout the year, and a change in our LCAP goal, is that we are going to be really working hard to provide professional development to evaluate and ensure that teachers are systematically applying the techniques of data-driven instruction, which includes identifying essential standards, regularly using assessments, to look at those essential standards in the mastery, and then to use that data to guide our instruction and to give feedback to students and parents. So you'll see that behind the scenes a little bit. For tonight, we want to showcase 3 new things. So we have a new language arts program in our elementary school. We have, for the first time, our TK standalone programs, 2 of them across the district. And we want to talk to you about how we noticed some issues with math fluency and how we've addressed that this year as well. So we will get started by having Dawn come up to the podium and get us started with language arts.
Is this the new language arts
Curriculum, yeah.
What did you do to your foot,
Sorry,
Dawn?
I just kicked someone is what I did. I have a hurt tendon in my foot.
Oh, man.
I should come up with a better story than that, though, huh? I'm going to refresh your memory about the adoption process we started in the beginning of October 2015. A selection committee comprised of Ojai Unified teachers from each site and all grades and administrators assembled for the purpose of reviewing and selecting an English language arts and an English language development program for our students. During this process, the committee met over 15 times, and the meetings included the following activities. The committee attended 2 publisher fairs at Ventura County Office of Education, used data to develop a district lens, and developed a needs assessment and a rubric to use when piloting. They visited the VCOE library to research and examine the 6 K-6 programs from the adoption list. Then they narrowed the choices to 3 publishers and listened to half-day presentations by each of those publishers. Next, the committee narrowed the pilot choices to 2 programs and received training from both publishers during the district staff development day in those days on 2016, August. 12 teachers piloted the 2 programs last year, and they received follow-up trainings from the publishers during the pilot period, and they met to discuss both the programs. They developed a scoring rubric to utilize to assess each of the programs. After those 12 teachers piloted and used the materials for up to 10 weeks each program, they made a recommendation that the district adopt Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Journeys for grades K through 6. The overall reaction to the new program has been positive. One teacher stated she likes Journeys because it has many resources that can be used to differentiate instruction. It was also noted the new curriculum has components for intervention that are being utilized. The curriculum that's been adopted for TK is also published by the same company, and it's called Big Day. And Catherine White is going to share more information about the TK program.
Well, as you already know, the students who are turning 5 between the September 2nd and December 2nd are now placed in a transitional kindergarten program. And additionally, students are allowed to be placed in the program if the student success team deems it an appropriate placement. So they may be kindergarten age, but teachers have made that decision along with parents that maybe TK is more appropriate. Last year we had a standalone TK class of students from Topatopa and Miramonte that was offered at Miramonte, while the other sites continued their TK-K combination classes. At the end of the year, the TK and K teachers got together and they weighed the pros and the cons of having the TK-K and having a straight standalone program. And after a lengthy conversation and many emails, the final decision was that the benefits of the standalone outweighed the combination TK-K class, so the decision was made to offer standalone programs this year. So this year we have TK programs operating at San Antonio for TK students in the Topatopa, San Antonio, and Summit boundaries, and one on the Miramonte campus for the Miners Oaks and Miramonte students. Of course, since we allow the intra-district enrollment, students are crossing all over the valley in different areas. Here are the numbers so that you have a sense of the demographics. There are currently 22 students attending the TK program on the Miramonte campus. Of the 22, 10 of them are neighborhood students. 3 students are intra-district by choice. 2 are inter-district. 5 students who would have attended Miners Oaks if a TK had been offered on that campus. 2 are Miramonte students who moved from kindergarten to TK after having that student study team. Of these 22 students, 6 of the students are English language learners. There are currently 18 students attending the TK on the San Antonio campus. Of the 18, 2 are neighborhood students, 8 are intra-district by choice, 1 is an inter-district. 5 students would have attended Topa Topa if the TK had been offered on that campus. 1 student would have attended the Summit School if a TK program had existed there. And 1 Summit student moved from kindergarten into a TK program, so they came down the hill and attend the San Antonio program. Of the 18 students, 6 were approved as early admission since there was space in the program, meaning that they were not of age at that time, but there was space, so they allowed them. And then 4 of the students in the program are English language learners at the San Antonio program. So this evening, we have Miss Stephanie Hull. I don't think Nikki's not here, is she? Okay. Nikki's our aide, Nikki Crawford, in our TK program at Miramonte School. And so Stephanie's here with some students from the Miramonte TK program, and they're going to share with you an activity from that new English language arts adoption. So, Stephanie?
Catherine, just a quick question. When you say intra-district in this context, you mean, so intra-district for TK would be someone who should have been at San Antonio going to the Miramonte?
Right, so there are by choice ones, people that had already wanted to go there, and then there's the students that went there because their school didn't offer a TK program.
But intra-district means?
Intra means from one school.
In this context, we're talking about a district would be Miners Oaks and Miramonte as one district, so to speak. When we say intra, or one school, when we say intra-district.
Intra would be within our school district, our elementary schools,
right, what
correct.
I'm trying to figure out is, are you saying these are, if the TK program at Miramonte was designed for Miramonte and Miners Oaks, when you refer to an intra-district, are you talking about a kid from Topa who's going to that one as opposed to going?
No, that just means that a parent had applied to be at Miramonte's school for just to attend Miramonte, regardless of whether or not it had been in a TK standalone or a TK classroom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if we're talking about people going to a particular school who otherwise would have been going to a different school, or we're just talking about...
those I referred to differently. Those would have been kids that were, just for lack of another word, forced to go because their program didn't exist.
Okay.
So no, the intras are ones that chose, intra by choice.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Prior to knowing there was going to be a standalone program.
Yeah.
Correct.
Had already registered
already
at
registered.
Miramonte as intra-districts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, at our elementary schools, it's easy because everyone has an elementary school that's closest to their house. And so if they choose a different one, that's inter-district.
Yeah.
Here we only have 2 TKs. So what I'm saying is, do you create a geography that says you are in one TK, you're in the other, and if you decide to go to the opposite, then you're in that?
Okay, so let me answer, yes. So the answer to that is yes. So the Miners Oaks students came to Miramonte.
Right, but they had no choice.
They had no
TK.
choice, but there were kids from Miners Oaks that came to Miramonte because they'd already submitted an intra-district before we made the decision that their kids were coming to us anyway. Okay.
Got it, I got it.
All right, good.
And another quick question on that before we, the inter-district, and you may not know, but do you have any indication, do those families plan to stay in our district, or did they just come for the TK?
The inter?
Yeah.
No, I would say the inters generally stay with us. Yeah. Yeah. And they don't offer a TK program at all of the schools in Ventura. They satellite them as well to specific schools. And the last I recall, Sunset did not have an inter-district.
So
I'm sorry, a TK program.
Even younger.
Yeah. All right, so Stephanie?
So I haven't done this before, so I'm just gonna do like I do in my classroom.
Sure.
Perfect.
Come on up. And you can cut me off if I go too long. All right, so Miss Stephanie's gonna put her chair right
And I
there,
just want to
then
say
we'll
that
know where to
having
sit.
had postponed it from December to now, and then having, the fire and the rain and all this, we thought we were only gonna get 2 kids tonight. And so we're really happy to have this many children here. So parents, thank you for bringing your kids.
Here's
Yeah,
the
thank
start.
you and welcome.
Here's the start of the program. How about we start first by sitting the TK way? Can we show us how we sit the TK way? Annalie, you can sit right by mommy, or you can stay with mommy, that's okay. Annalie has the same affliction as I do. Big crowds make us a little bit scared. So we're gonna start with a little song to start. Can we do that? Remember this one? 5 green speckled bugs sitting on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool, there it was nice and cool. Then there were 4 green speckled bugs. Here we go. 4 green speckled bugs sitting on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool, where it was nice and cool. Now there are 3 green speckled frogs. 3 green speckled frogs sitting on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool, where it was nice and cool. Now there are 2 green speckled frogs. Here we go. 2 green speckled frogs sitting on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. One jumped into the pool, where it was nice and cool. Now there's 1 green speckled frog. 1 green speckled frog sitting on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. He jumped into the where it was nice and cold. Now there are 0. How about really quickly, you introduce yourself and say your favorite animal. Who are you? What is your name? Isabella. What is your favorite animal? A unicorn. What kind of a habitat does a unicorn live in? Do you know, Anna? Behind the rainbow. I bet there were unicorns in Ojai today. Did you see the rainbows? Oh my.
I saw 2 at my house.
You did. And what's a characteristic of a unicorn? Does anybody know what's a characteristic of a unicorn? Chloe.
It has a horn.
It has a horn. What else, Chloe?
They have rainbow wings.
They have rainbow wings. Yes, they
And
do.
they could live in the forest too.
They could live in the forest too. You're right, Isabella.
They have wings.
They have wings to fly. If they have wings and a horn, what are they called?
Alicorn.
An alicorn. What about this one that starts with a
Pegasus.
Pegasus? You're exactly right. And what's your name? Come on, what's your favorite animal?
Bird.
Birds. What's your favorite bird?
Parrot.
Parrots. And what is their habitat? What's the habitat of a parrot? Do you know, where do they live? In a tree, yeah. And what's a special characteristic of a parrot? Do you know? Something. They have wings. And what do their wings help them do? They help them to fly. Helps them protect themselves, right? Anna. Oh, what's your name?
Anna.
What's your full name? And what's your full beautiful name? Your big name? Sometimes I call you by it. Anastasia. Beautiful. And Anna, what's your favorite animal?
Giraffe.
Giraffes. And what is their habitat like?
Savannah.
They live on the savanna, don't they? And what is something that's unique to a giraffe? What's the characteristic of a giraffe?
They have really long necks.
They do. Why do they have those big long necks?
So they can reach the leaves on the tree.
That's right. That's right. Is that what they eat?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're herbivores, aren't they? And who is this beautiful young lady?
Zia.
It's Zia. Sometimes I call you Zizi, huh? Yeah. Zia. What's your favorite animal? A giraffe, just like Anna. And is there something else you could tell us about giraffes, why you like them so much?
Maybe because they have spots.
Yeah, maybe. What do you call their babies? Do you call them chicks?
No, those are for birds and chickens.
For chickens. Do you call them puppies?
No, those are dog babies.
Those are dog babies. Do you remember what we call a giraffe baby? No. It's just like the name for a cow baby.
Fool.
Oh no, that would be a different animal. But what is a calf? You're exactly right. Who is this young gentleman? What is your name? Eric. What is your favorite animal?
Frogs.
Ooh, frogs. ¿Conoces en español? ¿Cómo se dice frog en español? No sé. Do you know en español?
Sapo?
Is it?
I think so.
Grana? Grana. Sí, grana en español. Frog is grana. And where do the frogs live?
In a pond.
Do they live in a pond? Eric, why do you like frogs?
They jump so high.
They jump so high. Can you show me? Let me see how a frog can jump so high. Whoa, that was really high. Can everybody do a big frog jump? Let me see. And what do they say? Ribbit. Very good. Before a frog becomes a frog, what is it? Do you know?
An egg.
Well, after it comes out of the egg, what is it?
A tadpole. First it has a tail.
It has a tail, you're right. So I'm not going to read this book today, but remember when we read this book in class? What was the title of this book when we read it in class?
Animal homes.
Animal homes. You remembered that. How could you tell this book was about animal homes?
Because there is an animal on there and it's in its home.
It's in its home, isn't it? So we're going to play a really fun game that we played before, and this is how I think I lured you here. This is a game where we get a surprise animal, and maybe some of our friends up here would like to play with us. And we don't show anybody, and then we mingle match, and then we get to go into our animal habitat if you follow the clues that I give you. Should we play? Should we teach some people here how to play? Okay, let's do it. So are we ready? I'm going to give you a special animal. You are not going to show anyone your special animal. It may not be your favorite animal, but all animals are cool, aren't they? They're all awesome. So we're going to all keep our awesome animal a secret. Ready? I'm going to put it on your hand. Cover it up. Ready? Oh. There you go. Okay. I have an awesome animal for you. Are you ready? Who's ready to play?
I love that. Yes.
Some animals, I need at least two in a group.
I mean,
Cover
I
'em
need
up,
my
don't
glasses
show
to
me
figure out what I am.
Yeah, get out your glasses. Are you ready? Okay, this is a game we play. It's called Mingle Match. Are we ready to mingle match?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody has to come out from behind their desk. Everybody's gonna mingle match. You're gonna match up with your animal friends, okay? Mingle, 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 mingle. Go find your animal friends that match yours. You have to show them your animal. Mingle, you have to show, yes. Mingle, mingle, mingle. It's not a secret anymore. See who has your animal.
now.
I know. Mingle, 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 mingle. Mingle, mingle, mingle. Are you ready? Mingle, mingle, mingle. Who has now when you find your animal match, move away from the group. So go with your animal match. Mingle, 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 mingle. Mingle match.
What is that?
What animals do we have? Eric, what's your group? Frogs. What letter does that start with? Frogs. What is that letter? Do you know that one? B, fish. Who knows that letter? F. Very good, letter F. And what animal did you guys get?
What did we get?
Chloe. A bird.
Her favorite animal.
Bird, that's her favorite animal. Miss Chloe, what does a bird start with? What letter? B for bird. What animal did you get, Anna?
A giraffe.
Oh, a giraffe. This is a tricky one. This is a tricky one. So giraffe. Giraffe starts with what letter?
J.
It sounds exactly like that, but it's a trick because it doesn't start with a J. It starts with the letter
D.
Yes, you knew it. What animal did you get, Isabella? A bee. What letter does that start with? A bee. And Zia, which one did you get?
Bear.
Bear. Starts with the letter. What letter does it start with?
B.
Letter B. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to spread out and everybody's going to grab a corner of the sheet. Can you guys mix up? Mix it up, 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 mix it up. Okay, now listen. I'm going to tell you a clue. And we are going to go under the sheet only if your animal matches up with the clue I give, okay? So we're going to shake that sheet. Here's the clue. This animal lives in a habitat that is mossy and has lots of water and is near a pond. Who is it? Go under. Who is it? Frog! Shake, 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 shake. All right, come yeah, stay under here. All right, give them 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, come on out, come on out, come on out. Okay, now keep shaking. Now this animal lives in a habitat that is way up in the trees, and it's called a hive. Oh, go under, here we go. That's down to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now listen close. This animal lives in a nice, warm place and hibernates all winter long. It lives in a den. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on in, come on in. Okay, listen closely. This animal has a very slimy tongue, and it really likes lettuce, and has a really long neck, and it lives on the savannah. Oh, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out you come, out you come. How about for one last hurrah, we let all the little kids go in and we say the ABCs really quickly. So everybody go in, all the little ones. And we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sing with me? All right, thank you parents for coming, and that's just, that was extra if we ran out of time, if you want to have for you. So this is just really quickly, all of my TK students that came tonight get a golden ticket. Really exciting. This is something we worked very hard for, and you earned it, golden ticket, golden ticket. The golden ticket allows them to bring an item to show and help. There we are. All right.
Great
All
job.
right.
Thank you,
Thank you, Miss Stephanie. Hey, Teresa, you get to follow that.
That's truly not fair. Oh my gosh.
I hope you brought sticks.
So I'd like to thank all the parents who brought their kids. It's really hard to get out in the evening. So Eric, nice job, kiddo. Okay, so as Cheryl indicated in her earlier remarks, the effective use of data is critical in analyzing the impact of the programs that we use to support and improve student success. When we transitioned to the Common Core standards, we noticed right away that there was no longer a specific focus on math facts. Bridges, the mathematics program we adopted in 2015 for grades K through 5, is a solid Common Core program, but we knew that we needed to do something to ensure that our students were truly fluid in their math skills. Consequently, after surveying the teachers, we chose to purchase a supplemental math program district-wide called Reflex. Reflex is fun and helps the students to gain math fluency skills critical to their success. And here to show you more about the Reflex program is our wonderful Mrs. Wilde.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I can't compete with TK. Reflex Math is really cool, though. So Reflex Math is a website that really helps kids learn math facts through gamified learning. It teaches addition and subtraction for numbers 0 through 10, and then also multiplication and division from 0 to 12. As students master facts, it exchanges them with a whole new set to kind of keep learning fun and engaging and make sure that their math fluency increases. With regular use, automaticity occurs. Automaticity is a concept that really has been overlooked in the Common Core curriculum, and it's one of those areas that we've been addressing in the classroom to make sure that we're really preparing students for the next steps. Educational researchers have been looking into this pretty extensively as well. They've been looking into an area called mental chronometry, and I always say that wrong, chronometry, or the speed of recall on given facts. Data shows that students who have greater mental chronometry perform better on math concept problems, word problems, data interpretation problems, and mathematical reasoning items as well. There's also a significant correlation to increased SAT scores with improved mental chronometry. Successful math fluency development also is very important on another level. It provides an excellent opportunity for students to realize the importance of effort in their own academic success, as opposed to attributing to success to some form of innate talent or ability, and adopt a more positive attitude towards mathematics and their own competency with it. In short, it builds a growth mindset. Automaticity should, however, not substitute or replace conceptual understanding in mathematics. We really have to build those foundational skills first. We can't just go straight to math facts. We have to build that that conceptual understanding first before we can build that automaticity. The two really work mutually beneficially to the students. In my classroom, I use Reflex Math in a couple of ways. First, I use it as a Tier 1 intervention for all of my students. And this can be done by using it as a warm-up exercise or as an independent math station during rotations. I also use Reflex Math as a Tier 2 intervention for students who are struggling to access curriculum because of a deficit in computational fluency. I prescribe these students between 20 and 30 minutes a night to work with Reflex Math at home or in an after-school session with me if computer access isn't available. The results, I have to say, have been even more favorable than I would have expected. I have to admit I was a little skeptical with the program at first, really looking into it. I think my first question when we had it was, so it's just math facts? I teach 6th grade. But I'm seeing huge gains in the progress of my student. And while I don't have the data to support the aspect of how it's impacting their learning and other math concepts, what I can say is that right now I have 11 5th and 6th grade students that are using it as a Tier 2 intervention. And of those students, all of them have gained a fact fluency, increased their fact fluency between 23 and 57%, which is huge. And it's giving them access to harder curriculum that otherwise they wouldn't have had an opportunity to really get into. It really creates that stopping point where algebra becomes really difficult when you're doing math on your fingers, right? So I'm really excited and really thankful that we have this tool in the district and that we're able to use it for the whole class, but as well as as an intervention for my students that do need it. And I have some incredible classroom leaders that I'd like to introduce and call up to show you a little bit about what the program looks like. They're going to come by and show you their favorite Reflex Math game, because there's a whole bunch of them in there. They're going to show you their favorite one and answer any questions that you might have about how the program goes. So can you start by introducing yourself, Ava?
Oh, hi, my name is Ava Everett, and I'm a 5th grader in Miss Fiver's class.
And then Jack?
I'm Jack Vinyl. I'm a 6th grader in Miss Fiver's class.
And Teo?
I'm Teo. I'm a 5th grader in Miss Fiver's class.
Perfect.
I'm Hiram. I'm a 5th grader in Miss Fiver's class.
What's your last name?
Kim.
And Madison? Can you introduce yourself too, dear?
I'm Madison Rogers, and my favorite thing is
And you're a 5th. What grade are you in? Perfect. All right. So I'm going to let the students kind of take over the teaching moment here.
First question, do you like doing this?
Yes, but you have to be a
Type in the answers.
or part of the
Oh, you're throwing darts at the
Can you
balloons?
show me like how it works?
Picture is actually
So what does it mean when they're
It's
closed?
the entire thing.
I
mean the blue.
So this is
Why? Because you have to get to a certain skill level?
Also, once you get, so you get to pick the game. That's like your time.
2 days till you can get a new game.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's not
I can't
time.
believe how quickly you're doing this right now.
Yeah. Like
Do you think that it's going to have you that faster since using this?
Oh, my
In the
Really?
classes, you need to use
That's incredible. Wow.
Finish.
I'm trying to do it, I can't do this
So
way.
yeah, once I do enough problems,
To show you got it.
yeah, and then yeah.
Oh my goodness, 43 seconds?
No. So how do you know? I've done some of it. I mean, but sometimes you do it. No, I don't do it. But sometimes.
puzzles and then you go into the real game.
But you know your math facts, so you are there other games besides the puzzle?
Yes. Once I can complete the puzzle, I will go on to take it.
So you're taking faster than I could. Oh, and it's multiplication.
Yeah.
So if you miss one, do you just skip it and then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I have to do one more game before I can go to the
What's your best time you've ever done on that one?
I have no idea.
So this just helps you
That
get
is
really fast.
pretty close to it, I believe that.
Oh, see, that was hard. I totally went, you can't divide that, but it was multiplication. So that's what I'm
Give me a more.
And slowly it gives you a picture.
Now I should be able to play the game.
So what are you, obviously you're trying to do math, but what's the game
What do you
here?
mean you should be able to play the game?
Yeah,
So you do the puzzles.
The puzzles kind of let you into,
Yeah.
and what are the kinds of games?
So what happens based on your score? What do you get?
You
when
get
you-
more games which you spend on decorating your island avatar.
Wait, what?
The one is
Where you place your island avatar?
problems to go onto different platforms.
That time of
Okay.
And the problems are floating above the platforms.
So do you know you're gonna get into this game because the puzzle was a hot air balloon?
Well, you click on the game.
Oh, okay.
What's harder, doing the math or typing?
You did it.
After the picture puzzle shows you a little animation.
This
Picture that's been tuned.
And while you're watching the game, if you have any questions for me, I'm here too. Although they know way more about me than I
I
do.
forgot you were there at all.
It happens all the time.
Alright, so what's the?
Okay, so wait, what
I
happened?
died.
Alright, so it's what?
So it is,
Okay.
you know, you said at one point, is math just math facts? It is
I'm amazed.
effectively
How quick
math
you are.
facts, but in a
You say you're
context that
sixth
makes
grade?
it really fun.
But again,
Fifth?
really
You're
looking
fifth?
at
You're
that
doing your
on
math
the
that
level
quick?
of having a gamified
I do
learning
fifth grade.
platform.
Yeah,
It's
I
not using
can
those
tell.
standardized
So
tests, which
here's
is
my
really
avatar.
Taking a
Not only is it road,
Too many distractions,
it's also
huh?
not the best format for learning for a lot of students. So I'm they're not getting access to those math texts. Because the reality is with that format.
How did you make them? Were you able to like choose between different people?
Not always, but
Different go higher to finish up. You don't want to do
So are you able to do any customization right now?
I'm glad you showed me some of my daughters in third grade. She did Reflex too, but I actually never managed to do it. But she even asked.
So, and then if you go down,
She likes it, so I'll do it. So you have that much too?
yes.
I think you're very good at it. You're really building that automaticity. Like, can you tell you're getting faster at it?
Whichever, if you're like lower so if you're really high, yeah.
Do the one on top to get it to go up.
That's really important, huh?
At the beginning of our teacher does a game of around the world,
And the conceptual.
I can't believe right now you're doing your math while it's
About
talking.
what values are positive and negative.
I know, I mean,
I can't do that.
You noticed you're faster at that. Awesome.
I mean, it's
So how long have you
early
been
as TK,
using
right?
this,
The
program?
rods jump off the log, and
So
as
eventually
you do so,
do you
you
get to-
lose.
And did you have different
Yeah.
math ones before? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah, would you like that one?
Oh, even in the game.
yes, I kind of
Tricked into doing math the whole
Do
time.
you like it more? Why?
on movie math, basically playing
Start with the answer
questions
as you go to get higher on the platform, the higher you get.
You had a.
Your guy gets hired.
Oh, okay.
Yourself out in a
It's higher.
So it wasn't the movie math. What you're not necessarily like playing the game when you're doing the
Can you
math.
aim for
It's just
anyone?
you're doing more basic or regular math, and then they give you time to play a different game.
Try to collect as many as you
That's
can.
cool. So it's actually it's a game.
And,
So you have to do the big.
and then
I know we've got some really good games going, but we will also, I know you guys have some dinner to catch. And these fine ladies and gentlemen have a meeting to continue. So we'll wrap up the game that we're on and answer your last question.
And once you complete the game, you
How
can
much
get
time
a
do you spend
green light,
on the
and then the
doing
green
this?
light allows you
Which
to
week?
go to a store where you can customize your character and buy little accessories.
Yeah.
That's my daughter's favorite part.
the guy that kills you.
Do you do that?
Do you like that part too?
Movie Max.
No, just that school.
I like this part because
Fly over to the 6th.
Very cool. Thank you for showing me.
so this is the guy that kills
Oh,
you.
okay.
You touch him, you die.
Are you playing Curie over there, Ted?
Quick swivel.
It didn't combine the games and the math. You'd have to do the math to get your game time.
I could do the math, okay, but doing the math, typing and having a conversation, explaining stuff to me, I'm blown away.
Those young ladies want to teacher.
Can't well, you could not.
I could not say that.
So it would
Kind of like.
It's true.
You would get to play a game.
Yeah.
And this way you play.
My daughter like asks to play it. Like Sunday. Sunday. She's like, can I play?
Before I died and then when you
It's the green light. It's the key. You get to go buy your character
Resurrect yourself.
accessories. Cabby, I don't know. I might want to play that too.
No, you were 5th or 6th grade.
And do you have like your own sign-ins? You can do it at home?
Yes.
You play sports?
Oh no, I was
and except for golf, bowling, fishing, and archery.
Okay.
Golf, bowling, fishing.
So that's not saying how many
archery.
questions
Love
you've
that.
got,
Those are
it's
good
just
sports.
giving you, those are the points you're getting,
Like,
are the
like
points.
Grizzly
Yeah.
Adams.
So here's the game.
How many different
And
games?
where do you fish? Do you fish in the lake at all?
I fish, I don't have
Like I
a
said, you have to
fishing
have
book.
I unlocked
Another
this game
different
today.
lakes and oceans, but
So I'll
there's
have
a
a work
little
could be
lake
like
over.
Rises from the.
yeah, I got aliens. I've got 7 days to go to.
You know where the
So it
little
unlocks
uh,
tennis courts
just every
are?
week?
Yeah. It starts at 5 days, and you have to get a
Yeah.
green light for it to count as a day.
Oh, okay.
There's a little stream
Oh, yeah, you fished in
over
the
there. Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay.
There's smaller bass. Yeah.
Tell me your name again?
Hiram.
Hiram? Well, it was nice to meet Hiram, and thanks for explaining this to me. I'm so impressed by how smart you are and how you're able to talk to me while doing the math and explain it so well. You did great.
All right.
Very good job.
Thank
Thank you very much.
And as a grader?
Yeah, way better.
Way easier, because you don't have to do anything. So I'm done now. All right, thanks, Jack.
Have a good what?
See ya.
Good luck.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
He did.
Thank you very, very much for having us and having these wonderful students in.
Thank you.
And to the families, thank you so much for hanging out so long and for sharing wonderful children with us.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, the Reflex Math is a very powerful tool. It really engages the children. And what I'd like to say, going back to Cheryl's comments earlier with the data analysis, as the teachers teach, they don't go in just hoping it's going to work with their fingers crossed. They're constantly assessing and thinking, wow, how can we do better? Is this working? And the data analysis is really critical in determining whether or not it is effective. So that's an example of an action item that we've added in to really help fortify our plans to be as effective as possible. And now Robin Munson will share more.
I'm just closing for everybody, so I have this easy part.
The closer.
I'm the closer. It has been our pleasure to watch you engage with our students tonight from our TKs. The visual of ducking under the sheet is unparalleled. And up to our 5th and 6th graders playing math games, that they were, you can't be having students wanting to practice math facts and saying, okay, don't start yet. So obviously the effectiveness of that program is very high for our students. So we hope that you've enjoyed seeing our 3 new action items between the TK program, the Reflex Math, and our language arts curriculum. And we hope that you will come and visit us on our campuses and see the unique attributes and qualities that each of our campuses have to offer. And we hope that you found this evening to be as enjoyable, if not more than we did. We love to see our students working as teachers, and we love what we do and sharing a little bit of what every day looks like on our campuses. So please come visit us. And everybody left, but I wanted to say thank you to all of our kids and families that came in tonight. It's probably way past our TKers' bedtime, but and I know our older students had other meetings to go to. So thank you so much, and I will turn it over to Cheryl. Thank you.
Well, with that, unless you guys have any other questions, now would be the time to move forward to approving the SIPSA plans.
So maybe Marilyn, you can help with this. One thing this is me. It all blurs together. We get the SIPSA, and we get the LCAP, and the LCAP and the SIPSA have a lot of the same terminology and a lot of the same goals, and presumably a lot of the same approaches to meet those goals. Could you help put this in a little context? Thanks.
Think of SIPSA. SIPSA is a requirement for Title I. If you're a Title I school, you must do a SIPSA. It's mandatory. So really, the only site that doesn't have to do a SIPSA is San Antonio, because they're the only site that's not Title I. So, but it's just good practice to meet with your site people, your site parents, and talk about goals and how you're going to spend money to achieve those goals. I think that's it makes the process real transparent to have it at a site level, up close and personal, I think. The LCAP is sort of like a big SIPSA. Again, you're involving your parents, but where SIPSA is federally mandated, LCAP is state mandated.
And they have very similar software, it looks like.
Yes, and the LCAP is much newer, but we really try to align our SIPSA goals with our overarching LCAP goals. In fact, what Cheryl talked about is the assessment, professional development, to work with our teachers to be consistent and systematic about looking at data and analyzing it and then implementing it to drive instruction. That's going to be a major action item on goal 1 in the LCAP. I've already written it in. Provide professional development to and do the things that Cheryl referred to. So.
Yeah, I think, what I love actually is because we can get so, any of us who've been on a, in an organization that's formulating a, mission statement, know how you bog down you can get with, we are an active organization, engaged, and then it just becomes words. So it's really nice to have a presentation like tonight where you guys come in and say, this is on the ground stuff we're doing that's different. I mean, you clearly can see that approach to math is gonna have great impact, because it just, I didn't want to stop us. Next time I see 17 minus 9, I'm gonna know that it's 8. Come on. But, so anyway, I know we have to do a lot of these things, but personally, I really appreciate you, distilling it into some actual stuff.
I think that's been real important for our team, is that you get these plans and they're cumbersome and you have to write them, they're mandated, it's part of the accountability, but it's so much better when you can see it up close and personal and how it's manifested in our students. And I think for the last 3 years we've tried to do that. Rather than just the tedium of the plan, it's so much better to see it, I think, in action.
And I think as a district, that's what we always should be doing. We'll try things, and if they don't work, we'll try other things, but we need to be trying things, it needs to be having a on-the-ground impact and not just words, which I don't think any of you disagree with. I just think sometimes we get burdened, I guess, by all those requirements for all the words, and it's just good to know that stuff is happening, and it was really great tonight.
I just have a question about the requirements for the words. So, we're.
Oh, you and your words.
I know, and the words. Well, so we're asked to approve the SIPSA tonight. The LCAP, though, is not part of this, right? Is that later, or?
No, the LCAP is not part of the SIPSA, but the state of California encourages you to align your SIPSAs with your LCAP. So that's what we've done, and you'll notice the goal, like the goal 1 in the SIPSA is the exact same goal that we have as goal 1 in the LCAP, the academic achievement goal. So those are all the same.
So in our meetings, will we be looking at the LCAP later? Or are we kind of?
I told you all I was so glad that I didn't have to talk tonight, because I'll be talking about the LCAP.
So we will be talking about the LCAP later.
We will be talking about the LCAP.
So those who were excited to hear about the LCAP stay on the edge of their seats, waiting for the time when that comes.
It's just too bad the LCAP doesn't have quite the same, because we can bring students to show the SIPSAs, but, I suppose.
We can do that with the
LCAP.
I'll think about that.
Well, I was gonna say that the student component is excellent, because, it's one thing to say, well, we're doing Reflex Math and this is what it looks like, but to hear the kids go, oh, Moby Math got kind of boring, but this I'm staying engaged in, and to hear the feedback from the kids, I think is very helpful.
I'm so glad you guys are expressing that, because we've discussed this a lot on how to bring the plans to life for you. So it sounds like we were effective today. Really glad about that. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and that it did help further your understanding of the plans.
Well, and this is so much better than, 50 questions on a piece of paper, 2 plus 4 and 7 plus 8, and having to write all the answers. Instead, they can play games and probably learn it even better and faster.
They're so much more engaged and enthusiastic to participate.
So that's great. Well, if you're waiting for a motion, I'll move to approve the SIPSA.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thanks a lot. Yeah, it was great.
Thank you, guys. Awesome job.
Thank you.
It's getting smaller and
I feel like I'm in a scary movie. Everybody goes to the basement.
So we're now, thanks again. We're now going to have 3 discrete presentations, as I understand it. We have to have 3 discrete presentations with respect to some financial reports, and I'll let Andy take it from there.
Sure. So just a reminder, last year we went out for an RFP on hiring an audit firm. VTD was who we selected. VTD is one of the largest audit firms in the state of California supporting school districts. Certainly, when you talk to my colleagues from the CBO or superintendent ranks across the county, has absolutely a stellar reputation, and our experience in the past 18 months has certainly proven that reputation true. We are grateful they come out a couple times a year, April, October, or generally maybe sometime in the summer as well. But they're across our sites. They're working very closely with Patty, bringing out the whole audit team. And so tonight, the end result each year in December or January, we present to you their findings. As Kevin said, 3 distinct reports. We have asked Kelly, who is one of the leads on for our district, to discuss the first report is our actual district financials. Second report is on Prop 39, or it's the Prop 39 report related to Measure J, which is actually 2 distinct reports, both the financial and performance audit. And then they do the audit for Valley Oak, although we don't anticipate that actually being an active presentation, but if there are any questions about Valley Oak, I know Kelly's able to answer. So with that, we'll have Kelly come on up and review a few of the highlights and draw your attention to the most relevant pages of their findings for the financial report for our district.
And just to be clear, we as a board have been presented with the Valley Oak, although we're not there yet, but the Valley Oak financial report. So,
yeah.
At any rate, we're now on the subject of the school district.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to come here. I will draw your attention to a few highlights in the report, and then I'm happy to answer questions. First of all, on page 2 is the independent auditor's report, or what we call our opinion. Our opinion's unmodified, which is good. That means we don't say except for or in spite of or anything like that. If you'd like to read through it, if you have any questions about it, I would be happy to answer them. It's kind of wordy, but
we're all familiar with this process, so
okay.
I think you can focus on, unless any other board member disagrees, you can focus on anything you want us to draw our attention to, and we may have a couple questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. On page 5 is the beginning of the management's discussion and analysis. That's the part of the report that's prepared specifically by management to highlight any areas that they would prefer to highlight. And following that are the government-wide financial statements, and then the fund financial statements that might be in a more familiar format to you, as they follow the same format as your interim reports. Another page that I consider to be a highlight is page 74. That's the trends page. And that shows the most recent 3 years in a consolidated format for the general fund, and then the budget for 2018. And in the 2017 column, you'll notice that the district did end the year with an 8.9, almost 9% reserve.
On a percentage basis, that's a percent of?
That's a percent of your expenditures in the
that
general
year.
fund. Yes, for 2017.
Right, thanks.
Mhm. Then on page 94, we had what we call a management letter, and those are areas that we feel that the district can improve on for internal controls. They aren't items that rise to the level of what we call a finding, but they're areas that we feel the district could improve.
you speak to the issue with respect to the employee benefits reconciliation and your observation that it was inadequate procedures are in place for reconciling the employee benefits billing?
So we like to see a reconciliation that shows that someone has reviewed the bill from the benefits company or the provider each month to ensure that any additions and deletions are agreeing with any new employees who've been hired or employees who are no longer eligible for benefits. So they may not have left the district's employment, but they may be people who had been on COBRA or something like that and who are no longer eligible for benefits.
So if we created a procedure to start doing that, or?
I'd like to speak on that, yes. When one of the auditors had asked me how we were reconciling it, we really didn't have nothing in place, but since then I work closely with Myra and go through the report, what we have in the system, what's in the health, what's this reports, and we reconcile that at the end of every month. So we do have a procedure in place now. At the time of the audit, Myra was fairly new and we hadn't set up anything yet, but it has been corrected.
Well, I think one of the great benefits of having such a great auditing firm is to come in and help us with some of this stuff too. Take the best practices from everything that you see and apply it to what we're doing and give us some pointers to do an even better job. I mean, it's one thing to just say, okay, fine, but it's another thing to really help us, which I appreciate a lot.
That's our goal. Our goal is not to rack up a big list of, things. Our goal is to help the district refine its practices. Of course, the risk in this specific case is that you might have someone on the benefits billing who's not actually eligible to receive benefits. So that's why we recommend the reconciliation. And we will check it again when we come in the spring to do our internal control work.
And I think it's probably worth pointing out that very few districts are perfect, right? I mean,
That's true.
you always find something that other people could do better.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering, I always ask this question, I don't feel like I ever get a good answer, because auditors are very different in what they say. But how do we compare, how are we doing, just generally? I mean, you see a lot of districts, do you walk away from Ojai and say, man, they could do so much better, or, well, they're okay, or,
Well, the good news is you had no actual findings, so you had no financial statement findings, federal findings, or state compliance findings, so that's good. And no, I don't walk away from Ojai saying, ugh. I look forward to coming. It's a great team to work with. I enjoy working here, and so yeah, that's positive.
Great.
But you're right, we are very careful with what we say. We rarely say everything looks good, even if there are no findings, because you just don't know what could be there that's unseen. And our procedures don't always uncover like fraud when it existed. You were having an audit by a reputable firm at the time, and it's not always caught. So that's the sad nature.
Do a lot of districts have findings? Or is that kind of rare?
Of my clients this year, I think 4 or 5 had, several had compliance findings. Some of the state compliance areas are problematic. But, so maybe 5 of my clients had findings. And I work with about 16, 15 school districts.
It's good to just kind of get a sense, because we don't know. I mean, we're not out there looking at other districts. We only know what we see. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes.
Shelley, do you have that? I had a couple of questions.
Yes.
One is you were aware, I'm sure, that one of the reasons why we have you guys as auditors is we had this issue in our business office with checks that were written to this employee's own account, basically, or for personal purposes. What part of your audit would be looking at those procedures, and are you confident that we have much better procedures now in place for that kind of disbursement? I wasn't clear where it would show up, you know, I mean, I see like disbursements, would that be where it is? Disbursements, cash was, anyway, sorry.
Yes, it's in disbursements. We do testing on disbursements. And in the escape system, there are certain controls set up where if a purchase order is entered into the system, a management level person has to approve it. I wasn't involved with your audit in the past when the problems occurred, so I'm assuming that maybe some of those controls that you can set up in escape weren't set up. So now we test disbursements in depth, and we have found that the controls in escape are being implemented as intended.
Are we generating checks like physically, like so that there's, you know, because I can imagine like a system where like you'd have to have somebody, you know, keying off or giving their approval in some fashion that would absolutely guarantee that that person's approval occurred, or the check would never be generated. But if you have a physical system of signing checks, you could always have somebody forge it, things like that. I mean, where are we in terms of the technology of our check writing?
Do you want to answer that one, Patty?
I will attempt. All the checks we enter into the escape system, and the checks are generated by the county.
Right.
So,
I remember that. That was always the case though, right? Yeah.
With the exception of our ASB accounts. The system we have in place now is we have we have 2 people that enter accounts payable, and they strictly enter the accounts payable. Then we have a separate person that does not enter payments, go in the system, and she approves the payments, but she verifies that we have all the backup for the invoices, that the invoices are signed, that we have receivers for them, if we have a reimbursement for an employee, that we have the appropriate receipt. So we do have that check. And myself, I never enter payments, but I do approve them if that person is out sick, or on a couple occasions that I have been able to enter payments, somebody else will approve it. So there's not, the person that's entering these disbursements is not approving them. So that is one of the systems that we have in place.
It's always someone different in every case.
Always somebody different. And the 2 ladies that do accounts payable in our office do not have access to go and approve checks. They do not have that access.
So that was the issue in the past, was that because we had so much turnover in the business office because of just reduced work staff and the many dynamics that were in that office at that time, Donna had the ability to create and approve her own payments. Right. Laura did as well as actually when I was first hired on, they just simply mirrored my account to Laura's, and so that meant I was able to as well. As soon as I found that out, I said I will never be entering a payment. There's zero reason that I should have access or ability to be able to do both those actions. And so that's been one thing that we've certainly, as Kelly was saying, that in the past we weren't utilizing escape in the way we should have been to make sure that we had proper internal controls. We do have, again, as Patty said, ASB accounts. We do have some checks that are being handwritten. We require 2 signers on that. So Patty and I are the 2 main signers that would both signatures must be on the check. And then there's a monthly reconciliation that takes place on those accounts. And so that would be the place where, Kevin, as you were saying, that someone could theoretically forge a check, but it should be discovered in the reconciliation
Right,
on a
where
monthly
someone would
basis.
say, what's this for, where's the backup?
Precisely.
Why?
Exactly.
And then one other thing, this is probably more for these guys, Patty maybe, ASB accounts. There is this reference you guys made that there's some negative spending in ASB accounts, and there's a fiduciary obligation to the other accounts, and you're basically spending money that's from one club that, one club is spending money that's not theirs. How does the ASB money get there in the first place, and then how is it allocated among the different clubs?
So
And I'll add, I have a particular interest because I'm doing the mock trial, and we have a $500 entrance fee. And I asked Monson about it. He goes, "Well, there's $60 in your club."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, what is that? How did it get there? And where does it come from in the first place? And why might there not be more in the future?"
Why don't we have $500?
Yeah. Exactly.
The major money coming in from ASB is for fundraisers from the students.
For each particular club?
For each particular club. And in the case where the negative spending in one account, it was one of the athletic
It was band, wasn't it the marching band or something?
It was the cheerleading.
Cheer, okay, that's right, yeah.
Because their uniforms are so expensive and they have to have them before they can even start doing any of the fundraising, that's what had happened. That account became negative and we were never fully able to recoup the full amount for that particular club that year. So it had to come out from the general ASB account.
Is there, so how does the general ASB account how does it interact with the specific accounts for each club?
Well, the general ASB is like for general ASB. There's really no transfers between.
How does that money get there?
That is from like the prom, the dances at the school sites, whatever other activities that they do to fundraise money into the general ASB.
Okay.
Isn't that when we buy an ASB card, are we paying into that also?
The ASB card goes into general ASB, right? So when they do a general ASB fundraiser, it goes into the general ASB account. When they do fundraisers for a particular club, it goes to the particular club.
Who has the discretion to decide where the money from the general fund goes?
The leadership class.
Leadership class.
Mm-hmm. They usually would receive guidance from whoever's in charge of the accounts and the leadership teacher, but the idea is that you're supposed to present it to the students and that they are supposed to be able to chime in on how that general money gets sort of dispersed out.
I need to get minutes from that.
Cool.
So they do meet and they decide where they want to spend the money, if they want to have a dance, if they want to have a trip somewhere. And so they do have their little meetings with all that stuff.
And then in the case of the cheer over, spending money that they didn't have, and then presumably it's cheer will have to repatriate that money somehow? I mean, or did it just come out of the general fund, and if it did, was that approved by leadership?
Should have been a discussion.
So the cheer, did it come out of general ASB or did it come out of our general fund?
The general athletics and the.
But then ultimately general fund pours into that. So cheer was a unique situation, unfortunately, due to some turnover in staff overseeing the program, as well as just some inability for us to fully track the revenue that come in at that point. We did have to just take a loss on some of the accounts last year. There were students and families who were claiming that they had fundraised more money or had paid a balance that was still saying it was outstanding. We got enough of those concerns raised that we did believe there was legitimacy to perhaps some again not fully complete books that we received from some of the prior folks that were involved, and so we as a district just said that the general fund is going to be covering that expense. So in this 1 year's case, cheer will not be making it up. There have been times in the past where, again, as Kelly was saying, the fund or the dollars required to be able to purchase the cheer uniforms on the front end do sometimes require us to have the ability for people to prepay and then have some money coming in later on in the school year, later on at a different point. But this was a unique situation this past year that we just took a actually $10,000 or so loss.
Yeah, it was a little under, but 8,800, yeah.
So obviously anything coming out of the general fund would not then have the impact that was referred to in our report, where some clubs' money was being spent by other clubs, because you're repatriating the money from the general fund, so that's not ASB money, that's general fund money, right?
It was from the ASB, so there's a general athletics ASB account, and then there's sub-accounts below that have different clubs, so it's from the general.
But it's ASB money still.
It's ASB money, but what Andy was referring to this year with the uniforms, we decided to upfront the money with the general fund just because there's no money there.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. So that money came from the overall general fund of our district, and so it didn't displace or didn't come out of ASB money.
Not the current year, but this is just for June 30th, 2017, so this was last fiscal year that this happened.
I guess what I'm just getting at is that do we or do we not take money that should be the charge of the leadership to decide what to do with it, and we as a district decide we're gonna just, sorry, we just spent that money for uniforms, too bad, you don't have it. Or, I mean, when I had the impression from you, Andy, that we basically fixed it through the district, not through the ASB money.
Right, so actually, Kelly, maybe you can share, Patty, feel free to chime in, but the finding was that there was 12 trust accounts that had negative balance. There wasn't a finding that we actually were pulling money from a basketball account and putting it into baseball or something to that effect, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
So the way it works, there are the big overarching ASB accounts, and then there are separate clubs within the ASB. So what we noticed was that 12 clubs had overspent. Overall, the ASB still had a balance. They still had what we call a fund balance. But within that balance, some of the individual accounts were negative. So, and though there weren't contributions made, if contributions had been made, we might not have seen them. We would have just seen a zero balance overall.
But I guess what it sounds to me like is there's a ASB account, and then there are ledgers for clubs.
Exactly.
So those clubs don't have their own separate account, because if they did, then they would just run out of money and they would say, oh, sorry, you don't have money.
Right.
But instead, they can draw from they pull down from the account, and so
Right.
their ledger goes negative.
Mm-hmm. But overall, the ledger is
But
positive.
then it sounded like what we decided to do as a district is take some money out of the general fund and kind of fix what had happened with the uniforms.
Correct.
Okay, so ASB is whole, basically.
Patty, is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just here for the kids.
Totally understand.
All right.
I had one more question.
Yep.
How, do we have a system for tracking these recommendations from year to year? I just wanna make sure, I mean, some of the recommendations sound a little familiar, and I just wanna make sure that we're really fixing these and we're on to new things.
We do, we have them all in our audit report, so.
We look at the similar things each year, so we would see them if they were in place again next year.
Could we ask you, would you be the right person to ask to kind of customize our report so that each year you would show us what the prior years were in the report, like as an appendix?
We could, I think that we probably wouldn't include it in the audit, but we could, I guess, prepare a separate report that, you know, when I come next year or whoever from my firm comes next year, we could discuss it specifically
Yeah, I mean,
that way.
it's hard for us, you know, it's just the record keeping of being a board member is you get these piles and piles of stuff.
Mhm.
It would be very, you know, it would be honestly hard for me but I think Thane's point's well taken. It would be great as a fiduciary, which we obviously are, to be able to say, hey, here, because this is a core issue, of course, of governance, to say, hey, here's this year's report, here are the small issues that were identified, here were the ones we identified the previous year. So that we really can see, hopefully, progress that we're not seeing the same issues, but new ones.
And hopefully that's a very short list, but maybe there's like a star for every year it's been. That's right, or, well, yeah, the happy face would be if the paper's blank.
So now she's gonna be driving away thinking about Ojai, but very differently.
No, she was happy to be here until she talked to me.
That's fine. I'll try to remember. Maybe Patty can help me remember that for next year. I can bring 2 reports, I guess, last year's and then the current one.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as to the issue, you know, the issues, because they're not very many.
It's like just a paragraph in the cover letter. This is what we went over last year, and here's where we are this year.
Well, we probably actually don't want that in the audit,
Good point.
right? But,
Yeah, in the
we would
presentation.
like to
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I understand.
So does anyone have anything further, or can we move on to the Measure J, Building Fund? So we'll move on to Measure J, Building Fund. And these are all just informational, right? We're not taking.
We're receiving them.
So as Andy mentioned in the Measure J report, there are 2 components. There's the financial audit as well as the performance audit. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding Measure J. I don't have a specific presentation for that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I did not have any questions.
I have none.
I read it.
Shelley?
Excellent.
No, I'm good too.
Okay, so we can move to, I think it's Charter Oak. Valley Oak. Charter Oak.
And again, if you have any questions on Valley Oak's report, I'm happy to answer them, or any other questions regarding the audit process.
I had one question. The thing that popped out to me was the account receivable. I think it was like high 200s, close to $300,000. I just didn't know if that was, if they were awaiting reimbursement from the state, or if that was some other item, if you happen to know what that was.
I don't know exactly what that was. Patty might know. I hate to put you on the spot like that, but I just know that at year end, we noticed that there was an amount that the charter had earned and the district was holding, and the district hadn't yet paid the charter. It's just some sort of timing issue.
So it's something
I didn't.
owed.
Something that we owe, we transfer what it's called in lieu taxes, so we transfer part of our property taxes to Valley Oak. And at the time of June 30th, it hadn't been transferred yet.
Right.
Okay, but it has been now.
It has been,
Yeah.
right.
I just, compared to their financials, it was a fairly large number, so I was curious.
It
Right.
has been.
So that revenue that relates to that receivable is reflected in their revenue for the year. It just, the funds themselves had not yet been transferred.
Right, I was just curious why they hadn't received them, yeah.
Anything else?
But it doesn't matter since they have.
Just timing,
Yeah.
right?
Where do you live, Kelly?
I live in Camarillo.
So hopefully we'll have a safe drive home. I guess it's pretty clear now.
It should be fine. Sure, it was fine coming up, just a little slow.
Yeah.
No problem.
I think that's it. Thank you
Great.
very much.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
So now we move to Andy's presentation on Measure J.
Yeah, this one's actually going to be pretty quick. We have included for you, and it's just going to be a standing item to give you an update on projects that have already been presented to you from the fall that we're working toward completion on for 2018. And just we wanted to make sure you knew what those projects were that are currently being worked on. We've not gone to bid on any of those projects yet, but we are getting close, and so ultimately, again, each individual project will come to you for approval as we finalize the scope, finalize the submissions required for DSA or other agencies. But just for transparency for you as well as for the public, want everyone to know what the scope of projects we're looking at for this summer. The big thing that I wanted to share with you is I've certainly emailed each of you about it over the past month and a half, but we successfully closed on December 20th our Series B bond sale for Measure J. That was a $17 million bond sale. So we remember back in early 2015 sold $10 million. This was the second series of 17. We have an additional 8 that we'll hold off on. Probably about 2020 or 21 will be when those will go out for sale. But related to that sale, actually, after our November board meeting, the next day I was driving up to San Francisco, and with our financial advisor, John Isom, and our bond counsel and bond team, met with S&P, who is the rating agency for our bond, and through that conversation and the report we provide to them, they reviewed 4 main areas that drive our bond rating. Those areas are the actual local tax base, which is our strongest thing actually that we have to present. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily our own financials, but it's the property tax base for this community. What they find especially favorable and what they actually noted as being fairly unique was the number of properties that were on the lower end of assessed value currently relative to market value. And the reason for that is that we know in Ojai that we have a lot of families who've been residing in the same residence for a number of years, and because of Prop 13 and the assessed values, that it's far lower. So They actually have great confidence in the health of the local economy to be able to support this bond sale. And so that was the single biggest factor that helped drive our improved bond rating from a single A positive to a double A minus, double A negative. The other three factors they look at is district management. I'm thankful that the transition from Hank to myself did not result in a downgrade. They thought that was still okay. They did look at our district financials, and they also look at the actual debt structure itself. And so those are the four areas they look at. And between the four, and again, the biggest driver of that is our local tax base based on assessed values both of commercial and residential property. And then the reality that, as we talked about back in November, that this is actually a period for us that of relative financial health compared to the years, even as recent as 2015 when we last were graded, when we were still in the last year of furlough days and having less than the 3% reserve. So the fact that, as we just heard, we have an 8.9% reserve currently, that certainly helped improve our condition or our position financially, and ultimately what drove the rating change. This rating change really is significant. We estimate we'll end up saving this community about $500,000 over the life of the bond. So simply by having that single level improvement, we are going to see a really significant savings to this community over the life of the bond. So that was the report on the bond sale, and again, where we are in projects for 2018.
It's interesting with a bond like the one we're discussing. I assume the entire liability is borne by the property taxes, right? So regardless of what happens in the district, if the district were to go crazy and overspend or what have you, the bond is just directly connected to the property taxes, right? I mean, so that those monies would come off the property taxes, and they would go to the bondholders, and whatever's going on in the district would be kind of irrelevant, wouldn't it?
Right. I mean, there's no question. Again, that's what was our, one of our strengths is that when looking at property values, even actually when we're looking at assessed value or overall average, median home sale prices and assessed value, we really did not see we had 1 year, I think is 2009, that we saw a negative year-over-year change. Right. Other than that, saw positive growth every single year in the local real estate market. That was very unusual. During the recession, majority of communities saw multiple years of negatives, and the years when they had negatives were larger than what ours was. I think it was a negative 0.4% downturn. And so yes, that's absolutely the biggest factor they're looking at, because ultimately this is being paid for by taxpayers, homeowners, and again real estate owners. They are still looking though at the district. They want to make sure that this is not going to, the district is going to be an appropriate steward of those dollars and make sure they're fiscally responsible in their expenditure, and ultimately not at risk of. Ultimately, what's most important to them is that we're not at risk of state takeover because of fiscal mismanagement, or because we do look at ultimately having a solvency issue as a district.
Right. But if that happened again, the bonds are still fine because they're being paid for through the taxes, right? I mean, maybe they're talking about like litigation risk, maybe all sorts of other complications, but
Right.
I'd like to commend you, because rating agencies, obviously they look at the facts, but they don't go out of their way to increase their ratings.
Right.
So it has to be communicated to them in a way that they can understand it. They have to feel that you're credible, and apparently you've done a very good job in doing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And the community should thank you too for saving us all money.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, we have a better rating in this bond than we had in the previous, right?
Correct. 2017 improved from 2015.
That's great.
Right.
So we move on to the Thomas Fire reporting.
Before we move on, can I ask a couple of questions about Ron Tyndall's report? I think
Sure
that's
thing.
still what we're on.
Sorry about that.
And just to note, I'm sure you do see, and I think I may have, or I hope I had it in my notes, that this was the report from December that we weren't able to present on. So there, you'll see the date, and you'll see that there are a couple items that state, something will take place.
In
And,
mid-December.
exactly,
And I looked at the date and I thought, okay, so has the HVAC and lighting upgrades started? Since mid-December, I'm sure they didn't.
right, exactly, it was delayed because of the fire. So we are meeting, with them, at least as of now, it's still on my calendar for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. is the new kickoff. So, they were trying to get in right before winter break and work over winter break, but no, that didn't take place because we weren't able to have anyone in the classroom, so.
Right, okay. And my other question was about the Matilaha kitchen. It says the Matilaha kitchen layout design has been completed. And I'm wondering if that's just the internal design or if we have, does that include shade structure and eating area? Is that included in that?
That's only the kitchen itself.
That's only
No,
the
no, we're
kitchen
not
itself.
looking at
Okay.
the full cafeteria, changes or, eating space, yet. And I haven't actually myself even seen this layout, so this is just, when it says the design's complete, they're talking about the, Ron meeting with our architect and, with Julie Chesson, and we, there's a kitchen expert for, school districts who's been assisting them as well. But they're still a ways away from having, again, anything actually being presented to you.
So is this slated for this summer? And if it is, will that include, I mean, what are the chances that our kids are gonna have before next September when it's blazing hot, something to eat under?
Right now, it's not slated, there's nothing slated to be installed by
Okay.
September. In fact, this kitchen project is gonna be, if it is ultimately approved, going to be taking place during the summer as well as going into a significant portion of next year. And so, unfortunately, what Topa experienced this year is gonna be a reality for Matilaha. Whenever we get the final approval on the kitchen, get DSA approval and all the, health approval, it's gonna be a 4 to 6 month construction project.
So
And
there's gonna be a whole contingency of kids at Topa who move up to Matilaha and think that kitchens just don't exist.
Follows them.
Unfortunately, we know that we have a number of sites that need significant improvements to the kitchens. And at this point, we started off with Topa in part because it actually didn't require any true structural changes, or we weren't anticipating it was going to need it until we had to install the ventilation hood. But even that still wasn't a true structural change. For Matilaha, we are looking at needing a really significant change to that kitchen. It really is not serviceable at this point. Health department is requiring some changes, but also just for anyone who's been at Matilaha during lunch, I mean, we unfortunately, that's the site where we have the longest lines and have, kids often have the shortest period of time to eat. And one of the reasons for that is just the general layout and the flow and the way that we're able to disperse food or distribute food. So there's going to be some pretty significant changes there. And so again, a lot of these projects that we're looking at, other than roofs, are projects that are likely going to be taking part during the summer as well as during the school year.
Okay.
It's an interesting side note on the potential of sixth grade over at Matilaha. Obviously we have to have a much different approach to meals there, right? In order to accommodate a whole bunch more kids if we've already got big lines there.
Right, absolutely. So we'll certainly talk about that in the future, but one thing that is very common at middle schools is actually have more than one lunch. I mean, at Topa right now, we currently have how many?
3.
3 lunches. So, it's very common across our own district as well as at middle schools across the county and beyond, is that you have, 6th graders are able to eat self-contained, at one time, then you have 7th and 8th together, or actually in Moore Park where, I used to work 6th and then portion of 7th, they actually had half of 7th stay back with 6th, half go at the 8th grade lunch, but there are ways to work around, but you're absolutely correct, that would be a factor in consideration for a 6th grade move, would be some of those logistical challenges.
And I think once it's finished, if we can attack those, we'll have more kids eating, it'll boost our nutrition program.
I agree.
Because I know personally, my kids would rather just starve. They just gave up. They couldn't stand the lines, it was too long, it wouldn't have time to eat, so why buy it? And they just gave up. I don't know if that's
Sorry to hear that.
true for other families, but that was our experience.
It's a challenge.
Anything else?
That was it.
Anything? Boy, I'm gonna be, this is easy, I only have 2 people to worry about. Anything? Next time it's gonna be double that.
I'm the worst. So.
Moving on to the Thomas Fire.
Yeah, so we obviously gave an update on impact to the district back at our specially called meeting in December 14th. Wanted to have a follow-up to that. Have a chance, actually, we have David Rogers here who's going to give a brief update on the actual cleaning that was done over the break. Cheryl's going to talk a little bit about the way that our sites are actually trying to adjust for, or the steps that have already been taken to adjust for the change based on the loss of 10 instructional days. And then I'll wrap up with a few more comments about the fire, but we'll start off with David talking about what actually took place over the 3 weeks since we met back in mid-December.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so we started out inside the classrooms, ASR property restoration, basically cleaned every surface. Picked up toys, they pulled shoes out of cubbies, vacuumed, kind of walked themselves out of a room as they went. They used a product called Steramist, which basically just kills anything that's alive. It's used in hospitals all over the U.S. and really, really nice product. The general feedback from teachers is they're just ecstatic. It's the cleanest they've ever seen their rooms. And each of the air conditioning systems was blocked off and had the air actually exchanged inside of them. So that process took quite a few hours where they'll blow air in and then pull everything out. So they're basically brand new. And again, the general consensus is that the smell has just been alleviated. And many teachers actually had lingering issues with maybe a heater system that now we're seeing is not an issue anymore. So that's been generally positive for everybody.
Dave, what happened again with that, with the air? What did they do?
So they would actually seal off the whole air conditioning system.
Yeah.
They pull the filter out over here and they put an air exchanger in. So they actually blow air in through and pull it out of one vent.
Okay.
And so what it ends up doing is it's very turbulent air, and so it actually kind of mixes up all the dust and things that generally are just sitting in that little bottom portion of that pipe. There's quite a bit of dirt and dust that does collect. Gets pushed around and you smell it. And then especially down in the base units as well, they blow those all out, and there's quite a few dust bunnies and things lurking in there. So it's basically taking an air conditioning system and making it brand new. So there's no lingering issues. So the outside of our properties, actually, let me finish up. So the classrooms were then checked out by FCG Environmental. So they would do kind of your thumb test like this, except they send that off to a lab, almost like a CSI crime investigation where they'll lift up the dirt and made sure that there was no ash present, nothing biological present, and then also sent out air samples from our classrooms. So I've heard that so far has been also positive, and there's no issues there. We did have a few areas missed, which we've addressed already in the original cleanup. A couple toy sheds and different things that maybe had a special key that the cleaners didn't have at that moment. So, but as of today, I'm not aware of anything that was missed in the entire district. So it was really good. Our grounds and maintenance team worked diligently over the break. Call it a break, that's weird, but they were cleaning basically, our roofs, sidewalks, parking lots, gaga pits, sandboxes, wood chips even. Chuck and I were out the Thursday before everyone came back from school with a 3,000-gallon truck and a 2-inch hose, just cycling those chips over and getting all that ash out of there because, you put one boot on the wood chips and you just see this little puff. So.
How do you clean a sandbox?
Well, we had to reach out to the state. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but basically they just said a lot of water. It's not going to be a real big concern. If it was a really, really heavy ash where you're talking 1/4 inch plus, you actually end up scooping the top off and then replacing it. Ours was very minimal, so we were able to wash the sand. And the trick is you can't really do it with a 1-inch garden hose. You need a lot of volume. You need a large volume of water. So we ended up going through that night over 3,000 gallons, and then in the following days 20,000 to 50,000 gallons, anywhere in there. Miners Oaks Water actually donated all of the water that we use, so we didn't have to use district water and pay for that water. So I still need to give them a gift basket of some sort to say thank you for that. And they even came in after hours and on Saturdays to help us meet our deadlines. So
Is there a way to let the community know that? You know, besides the
All those
5
watching at
people
home.
watching?
yes, we do. I'm going to send something out. I do have my thank yous that I need to make public, and yeah, I think people need to know because they really
Yeah.
came through for us. It wouldn't. I don't think it would have been possible to get the work done without them being available. So we had a 2,000-gallon water truck, and we hosed down every inch of our campuses in about 3 days, and that was basically just back and forth the whole time between our sites and Miners Oaks Water. So
I was just kind of curious, insurance paid for the cleanup, right? So we weren't really out of pocket, but
yeah.
I think the estimate in our last meeting was somewhere between 1 and 3 million. Do we have any idea how much it actually?
We have not seen a bill yet. It is going to be paid directly by the JPA, by the insurance, so we won't actually have to come out of our general fund and be reimbursed. When I spoke to ASR's CEO on Tuesday of last week, I asked where generally we were going to end up, and he said, sure enough, at the upper end of his estimate. So he said that, you know, without knowing the exact number, because they haven't calculated everything yet, but he said it was going to be close to 3 million. Yeah, that ballpark estimate was correct.
I'm just heartbroken that all these beautifully cleaned classrooms are now
Right,
mud
muddy.
and trodden. It only lasted a week.
Yeah, it is sad, but bittersweet because we need the rain, you know, really bad. So.
Was everything covered by the insurance? I mean, including the environmental testing?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So the actual cleanup itself, everything was covered. The loss of property, unfortunately, we have found some items that have been either misplaced or that we've not been able to recover, potentially as a result of the cleaning crews that were in there, or otherwise, you know, with the campuses as they were for 4 weeks. So there were some things that were lost that were gonna, of course, any teacher's item. We had one teacher who lost a jacket, and some staff who, you know, the kinetic sand that was being, you know, that was in the classroom. The cleaning crew had to just throw the whole thing away because it wasn't able to be cleaned. So those things we'll be able to submit a property loss claim on. That's a separate insurance claim, and so that one we do have a deductible, but we're actually able to offset that deductible with any of our staff's hours that were worked specifically on the fire and the cleanup, other than my own. So David and some of our other grounds maintenance teams, the ones who actually, again, were working in those days following directly in support of the relief effort, will be offset on that claim. So I think that we'll actually end up being able to make an excess of what the true loss was, because they'll be compensating us for some of our time.
Other than a jacket, were there any other significant personal property losses?
No,
Here,
nothing
Paul.
really significant. Jacket, a couple jackets at different sites, and they actually may end up being just misplaced. We did find a gecko. It was 2 rooms down from where it had supposed to be. But nothing really significant, no.
The Nordoff video camera for video production.
Yeah,
Or
that-
a camera. Was it video camera? Or
Camera
still
and tripod.
Yeah.
We're still, I'm actually
Right.
wondering
Some of
if
these
that might
things
be.
could
just-
be, again, misplaced or
Yeah.
moved. You know, we had some fire extinguishers that were missing, and we found that they'd been, for some reason, moved over to the gymnasium. Perhaps people have been in an abundance of caution during the fires, decided that having
They'd feel
fire
safer.
extinguishers would help them feel safer. So they were literally pulled out of the rooms and moved over there. And so some of those things we are just finding were either moved or, you know, again, misplaced. But we do, it appears that there are some things that were either thrown away due to inability to clean, or perhaps, unfortunately, taken.
All right. Any other questions?
Transportation.
Transportation. Our buses are also cleaned. Cindy's very excited about that. I think she said they weren't even that clean when they were new for some reason. But so all of transportation and our vans, and we forgot the athletic vans, so those were done right before a match, you know, with a 2 p.m. deadline the day that the students came back. So yeah, we made it. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have to tell you, I'm a little, I'm just thinking about the insurance company dealing with a $1 to $3 million estimate. And then, no, it's $3 million, and then, okay, here's the check. I'll see how that plays out, yeah.
Right, well, they initially told me 3 million. I said 1 to 3 just because I wanted to publicly, not necessarily hone in on a single number when they were, giving me a ballpark number that, we didn't know exactly where it was going to end up. But the insurance actually sent a crew up here that was expert, on their behalf to simply oversee some of this work. So I'm not sure actually if you guys even ever saw them, but there was not FCG that was actually checking the end product, but they did send some people, a crew up here to make sure that, again, when they're submitting that they've been replacing every filter in every HVAC unit and everywhere else, they were doing some spot checking and they were, protecting the insurance company and make sure the work that was saying was being done was actually being done.
It is a shame. I mean, what did Shelley, you just said, it's a shame with the mud. It's a shame that we're about to get a whole lot of new HVAC, right? I mean, isn't a lot of the climate tech stuff gonna replace the stuff that's now just been
just the
cleaned up?
Units themselves?
Well,
the ducting will all remain, so it actually is a benefit.
Would climate tech have done? Are they going to do a similar kind of air circulation like you described, or?
I think probably not. I don't know that for certain, but it's not. I haven't seen that on any list when we've gotten replacement HVAC that they actually do that. The process takes 4 hours per HVAC system, so you can imagine every classroom 4 hours. It's quite lengthy and a very, very expensive piece of machinery that needs to sit overnight, unsecured. So
yeah, I mean, it was
should make sure they know that was done, so that they, even if they're, and if maybe we can save a little money if it was part of their bid somewhere. But I agree.
I don't recall it being part of the bid, but I mean, I'm grateful for this, and again, insurance covered it, so I was not going to argue with it. But the quality of cleaning really actually does, for the first hour or so that people were returning to classes on Wednesday last week, had the cleanliness on level with a emergency room operating room. It was the level and quality of cleaning. Goes far in excess of what we simply are capable of doing here with our equipment. It's not just a matter of our staff not wanting to or not having sufficient hours. Some of it was that they used over $500,000 dollars of equipment, as David was saying, to be able to have the equipment to do the type of cleaning and the SteraMist and different things like that. I don't. When we've had HVAC replacements, and I don't recall it in the bid for Climate Tech doing that level of cleaning out all the ventilation systems, that sort of thing. So I think that,
and this is all JPA paying.
Correct. Well, no. JPA only is the primary. They have the initial loss with a stop loss at like $250,000, and then there's a secondary insurer. Because we're the JPA, so even though we only paid 2.8% of the share, but ultimately that will come. I mean, so that's a fair point. I mean, when we say that the insurance is picking up all of this, we do ultimately pick up an initial amount that will be, for us, again, we pay, it's about 2.8% on the first, I believe it's $250,000 for this, will be, $7,000 we have to pay. Now our neighbors in Ventura will be paying a bigger portion.
The whole JPA is, I mean, the whole, the JPA happens to consist of a lot of Ventura schools, right?
Every school district in Ventura County.
Right, and
right.
So how many of them were affected by this fire? I mean, it's kind of I assume the JPA's solvent, and I mean, it's got hit with a whole lot of claims. All
So
the same.
For purposes of the JPA, all of these property, it's all going to be a single claim.
Yeah.
Because even though we have districts that have unique property owners of different school districts, it's all the Thomas Fire related cause, and because of the way that we're pulled together, it's only a single $250,000. That's that secondary insurer who's picking up what will end up being likely a $5 million plus final claim on the remainder of all the districts combined.
It's funny. I mean, I do class action litigation. I do wonder if we should stay aware of litigation, because if this is determined to be a result of a SoCal Edison failure or negligence, might be a decent way to get some of that money back.
Sure. Yeah.
And does FEMA kick in for any of this or not?
Frankly, I have not looked into what FEMA provides because for our purpose of the cleanup and that work, there's nothing that will.
Well, and you're not responsible for the JPA, but, yeah, out of
So,
curiosity,
yeah,
I mean, ultimately it'll impact us.
Right. I do not believe that FEMA's involved in the for the school district's support for the claim.
Anyone with anything for David? And then I assume you want to talk more broadly about other aspects of our response.
Correct. All right, thanks, David. So we'll
Thanks,
move
David.
over to Cheryl actually, and she's going to talk a bit about the both instructional impact as well as again the way that staff are trying to adjust to this change and maybe hit on a little bit of our Tuesday staff only day.
Okay, so obviously there's concern with missing 10 instructional days, so that was something that was addressed during our staff-only day on Tuesday, January 2nd. Obviously Nordhoff had the most significant immediate impact with their finals schedule being pushed back, so seems like they had really great collaboration and were able to come up with what turned out to be a very flexible schedule with finals. The week that students returned, the 3rd through 5th, were just all single periods, and then basically teachers are offering finals over the next 2 weeks, so this week and next week. And many teachers have turned to modifying their finals, so since there's not that 2-hour block that they were depending on, they've cut things back and really focused on some of the essential pieces that they needed to give for finals. Tuesday, January 16th will be the sort of official day for the second semester to turn over, especially in the couple of instances where we have semester classes where kids actually change courses, even though that flexibility still exists. So the year-long classes, some teachers will still be giving finals in that week of the 16th. It'll be a minimum day so that teachers can have their time to do the grading. That's an extensive task, and then doing, potentially the entering. Let's see, their goal at this point, although again it is flexible, their goal is to have all grades posted by January 26th. So hopefully that'll be the case and students will have those grades in hand. For the rest of the schools, there was really no major or immediate changes to the teaching and the instruction, but in all cases, there's way more content to cover than we can ever get to in a year. So teachers sit down and they do curriculum mapping where they kind of talk about what they're going to cover in certain weeks and months of school. Again, in all cases, we would look at identifying the most essential standards that we need to cover. And so they'll have to be doing a little bit of adjusting as we move forward. The junior high and high school has an easier time doing that because they're on the same site and they can collaborate. They already collaborate frequently as departments. It's a little bit harder for us to get all of the elementary teachers together to do that grade-alike work. However, they did really extensive work when we built the report card, and the report card is a standards-based report card, so we had those discussions in depth about what the most essential standards were when we put them on the report card. So certainly they'll be using those to turn to make sure that we're ensuring that students master the most essential things, so as we lose these 10 days. So any questions on any of that?
Do you have any approach towards thinking about the testing and sort of front-loading things that would be on the test versus, because we have now such limited time and kids have to be effectively prepared for an exam.
With 2 weeks less time.
Right.
Right.
So you might think, well, where I might have spread some stuff out, now I'm going to push some material towards the test, and then once the test is over, then I've got, then I can put some...
Certainly all of that would be considered. Obviously, you'd want to get to the material that's going to be covered on the test prior to the test and save anything that would be extra or content not covered on the test. Maybe save those projects and those activities later. That'll definitely be part of the discussions. Luckily, the 2 weeks before break, especially in elementary, there's a lot of fun focused in those 2 weeks. So that content is already sort of sparingly as far as the really core English and math. I mean, they're obviously working on it, but they're gearing up for their performances and, winter plays and winter song fest and things like that. So as far as losing 10 days of school, those were probably the luckiest 10 days to lose in regard to the amount of time we spend on, the core instructional materials. In
The
elementary
best
anyway.
days, according to us adults. The kids.
I know.
They feel a little differently. I know in the initial report, there were some students who were accessing the counseling. Is that ongoing? Have we had kids who?
As of our Tuesday meeting, I only knew of 2 that had planned to access the counseling as they returned to school. I remember the first day of school that 2 more had needed it. Certainly it would be offered ongoing if that is what is deemed necessary.
But it hasn't been at this point.
I don't know for sure how many sessions they've had as far as getting counseling support, but I'm certain that it's being offered to any degree that they need it.
And the families who lost homes, do we know if those kids are back in school or?
So I'll jump in here because I was also going to hit on the mental health piece. But for we announced at our meeting the 14th, where we believe the number was at that time. I can say now we are at 29 students who lost their home, or in some cases it may have been a child who, parents are separated, and so mom still lives in the valley, dad lost home, or vice versa. And so in that case, of course, the only silver lining is the child's able to retain some continuity of their life here in the valley still. So as far as families or students who have not returned, I believe we're currently at 5. We have 1 from San Antonio, 4 from Summit. We are working with those families to try to provide them support right now, as well as see their timeline of return. Of those 5, I believe that at least 2 or 3 are unlikely to return. I know 1 or 2 are at least very interested in returning, and it's just a matter of logistics if they're able to do so. So as far as of those 29 students who lost their homes, I don't believe there's again, we're talking about a low single-digit number as far as likelihood of leaving the district permanently. Of course, one of the things that we've talked about back in December, as well as that certainly is on top of everyone's mind right now, is that when we have this crisis, this catastrophe, that it really comes in actually a wave of 3, and one of that, we experienced one today, the concern with flooding, and then the third one, of course, is the economic issue. And so, at least what I'm hearing anecdotally is certainly that what's impacting a great many of our families, and what I've heard is causing concern about long-term viability of remaining in the valley, is actually the economic challenge from having lost potentially multiple weeks of work, or perhaps being laid off at this time, as well as the increased financial costs that so many of us incurred when we were in that mandatory evacuation, had to find housing elsewhere. And so that's going to be what's going to obviously take longer for us to see just how much of an impact it actually has directly on our enrollment. So that's where we are as far as
those low digits, the 4 or 5 that may or may not come back, are largely at Summit, which is a big impact up there.
Right. We're at 42 students right now at Summit, so no question. Any number of students, of course, is meaningful,
4.
but at Summit especially, that's 10% of the student population there. Right. So going back to the mental health piece, and this is something that I wanted to clarify for those watching at home as well. I appreciate Andrew's article in the OVN. She always does a terrific job. I think that make sure everyone recalls, we had an article in the paper on Friday that headline was, focused on our focus on student mental health, supporting students during this time. The article itself was largely generated from the conversation that we had during the staff meeting. I invited Andrew to be present, and so when she asked me a couple questions in follow-up, she was asking about the level of services that we were providing at this time, and she was asking about specifically our, again, mental health interns and clinicians who would be across the district. During that meeting, one of our main focal points was making sure that Janine Murphy, as well as Rebecca Kirkland, had a chance to speak to our staff about what we have, supports that we have in place, the reality that we had interns or, again, MFTs who were at every one of our sites on those first few days returning, both just as a general support for any staff that might need support. Our staff obviously are going through a lot as well, but then we're just available generally as they start to hear of need. If a teacher said, hey, I've got 2 students who I think would benefit from having an opportunity to speak with you, we made those services available. And so in the paper, there was a quote that I had that mentioned that we were going to have services in place for a day or 2, or I think 2 days, and then we were going to assess the need. And will be there as long as there's need, though. What that leaves out is the reality that one of the things that I'm most proud of in our district is that we actually have a very robust mental health support service program right now as it stands. So it's not a matter of we brought in clinicians for a couple days and then they might be gone. I mean, we have this infrastructure in place, and really, it's the great support from Help of Ojai, who makes it financially viable for us to have this program. But we are not going to have the mental health supports that we had in place last week go away. It was just a matter of, for a couple days, we told them to lower in priority their caseload because they are meeting daily with students across the district, and instead just be generally available, and that's help be able to assess where there's need. Fortunately, as Cheryl said, we actually have not seen the large response or a real need that surfaced in the past week. There have been a few families or a few students who have taken advantage of the services, but generally speaking, the supports that we have in place, again, remaining present, but are going back to providing services to the hundreds of kiddos that they do on a weekly and monthly basis. So just want to make sure that was known, that it wasn't a matter of we were having the support for only a few days and then it might go away. Those supports are there all through the year and every year. So we're grateful to Janine and her team, as well as to Help of Ojai, who told us also during this time that we have a blank check, that if there's need for mental health services at our sites, that they want to make sure that it was not due to financial constraints that we didn't have the support there. So again, we thank Help of Ojai as well as Janine and her whole team.
There's something about that I don't understand, which is, so what is the this is an embarrassment. I don't understand what Help of Ojai does with respect to our mental health services. They supplement it?
So, they help fund the program. So again, what's really is unique, in addition to having our psychologist across the district, we have Janine Murphy, who oversees our intern program, where I believe we're at about 8 or so. Do you know, Cheryl, what?
I don't know, but that sounds right.
It's about 8 interns that we actually, MFT interns, who Janine oversees, and so they're able to provide services across the district, but there is a cost for those 8 counselor and training counselors that we utilize. And so even though they again are being overseen by Janine, that what ends up being a fairly significant expense each year that we wouldn't necessarily be able to cover otherwise is supported by Help of Ojai. So they're helping fund the program that we have here in house with those interns.
Does Help of Ojai, are these people available for all of the schools, including the private schools? Or do they allocate some money to private schools, or they just do this for us?
I'm not aware of our interns working in private schools. I mean, I could be wrong. I've just never heard them talk about it.
Are in school elsewhere, right? They're not high school kids, are they?
No. They're MFTs, so they're college graduates working toward their counseling degree.
They need so many hours.
Exactly.
Right.
And how much is it, this additional amount that Help of Ojai pays?
I'll look into that and get back to you, because I want to make sure I don't misquote.
Like 10,000, 20,000?
I believe it's 30.
I feel like it's
I believe it's 30.
Your legal experience.
Well, if it were a deposition, I'd say I don't want you to guess. But
I don't guess. But I don't like to say something if I'm not 100% certain. But I'll say it here because I'm pretty close. I believe it's about $32,000 a year is the contribution.
I don't recall it this time. I think that's a good deposition.
Right. Yeah, so no, there's no question. Help of Ojai is a tremendous partner with us for these services. And again, during this time, especially, they want to make sure that that those families in the valley that are part of the public school district are able to receive those services and in the amount that is needed. So that was one thing to hit on or to discuss. Another thing, we met again last meeting, December 14th. At that meeting, we praised Maggie, rightfully so, Maggie Rogers, who is here as well again tonight. But we just want to give an update publicly on some of the efforts at the school district and again our wonderful PTAs, and PAs were involved in over the winter break. So we mentioned at that meeting that we were holding a gift card and toy drive at Nordhoff that took place on Saturday, the 16th. Actually, Cheryl, why don't you share a little bit, because you were a little more involved than I was, certainly on the couple days following, and I know it was a pretty overwhelming experience to see
It was overwhelming indeed.
the way the community came together.
You know, it was overwhelming even just Saturday with all of the stuff that our community had given, both monetarily, gift cards, and then the toys. It was pretty massive. And at that time, we were thinking that we were most directly going to be able to benefit the families that had actually lost their homes. And Maggie had contacted Amazon, and I think she said it here, but their words were something like, "We've been waiting for a phone call." They had been, putting things aside: bikes, helmets, skates, toys galore, Barbies, Legos, everything, cosmetics. There were so many things, and they brought 2 trucks. I wasn't there for the delivery, but the texts were flying about how just overwhelming it was, how much stuff they had donated. It took 3 classrooms. So we laid out, well, I didn't actually do it. So they laid out 3 classrooms of items, and we knew right away that there was going to be more than enough to offer it to all of our families. So we did start with letting our families who lost homes come first. And then we had actually arranged several days where many of us had signed up to work the rooms. But the first night that we offered it to all the OUSD families, there were about 200 people in line. So we did definitely, we figured out quickly that there was definitely a need for this. And so by the end of that night, everything was gone. But it was such an amazing thing to offer our families. And certainly Maggie was the ringleader in organizing all that. But it took a lot of organization. Our principals were there working long hours during that first week of what would have been their break. You know, Catherine White giving up Miramani, I think she was there all of the days, working a lot of hours to make sure that we could offer that. So I certainly want to thank everybody that was involved. I can't name them all because I wasn't there for all the days, but it took a lot of manpower.
I heard Jeff Bezos actually came up to Upper Ojai and was
really?
up there. Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
My son told me. I said, "How do you know what he looks like?" And he said, "Well, somebody else said it was him, so I looked him up and I went, oh yeah, that's him."
When was this?
Must have been last week, just since school started.
Wow.
Back up, yeah.
Huh.
And was in Upper Ojai. This is again the rumor on the street. I have no verification. I don't know his itinerary, but that's what I hear. And I would venture to guess because Amazon was so involved.
Mm-hmm. It was a very generous donation.
So Amazon was incredible, but again, as Cheryl said, that Saturday the 16th, it was also an incredible sight. We both were able to stop by and be a part of it. Just incredible to see this community come together, and it was also neat just actually driving to Nordhoff, and I had to run an errand down, actually coming to the office here after, seeing how many other activities were taking place that day in support of the relief efforts. But we ended up raising over $3,000 that day that is being given directly to the families who did actually suffer the loss of their home. Did you ever hear a number on the gift cards?
I did not.
The number that I know we were at one point was 4,000, but I think that ended up actually going higher than that. So between gift cards and cash, we're looking at well over 5,000, approaching 7,000. But again, the gifts, even before Amazon brought their truck, just the gifts that this community brought together to try to support these families and support those in need was still taking up a giant classroom and an office space in the admin wing over at Nordhoff before, and it was incredible to see that support and see how many folks are wearing the Thomas Fire T-shirts that we had Don with his printing machine out there that was making T-shirts for everyone that day and donating all proceeds as well. So incredible community event that day, and just we've had so many things. Pre-seeing that from what took place at Chaparral earlier in the week, that week of the 14th, where we provided over 300 meals to first responders. To the again the many things that have been taking place since that just at this point can't say enough, although I keep saying it. It's just how incredibly impressed I am by this community, how fortunate I feel to be a part of it, and just how it's amazing to see during this devastation the way that really people have said Ojai is unique, and I've experienced some part of it for the first 2.5 years I've lived there, but certainly nothing like what I've experienced this past month. I'm sure you guys would agree. And at Rotary last week, they read a note that a firefighter had conveyed to, I believe, a local shopkeeper here in the arcade shop owner, who talked about, they've spent more than a decade fighting fires and have been to just about every major brush fire or wildfire that's taken place in California during that span, and truly said that they have not experienced a community spirit like they've seen in Ojai in any of the places. They said, I haven't paid for a single meal now for about 10 days since I've been here. Just the level of support that you've given to first responders, but also that they've seen us giving to one another was something that was choking them up as they were conveying it, and they are trying to share that message, just how impressed they've been and how truly unique Ojai is. So want to take the opportunity to convey that myself as well. I think that'll be the place to open up for questions if you guys want to know about anything else related to the fire or our response.
Do you have anything definitive to say about that situation up in the Upper Ojai? With the relief up there and the,
No.
Well, I just want to say, we've all said it. I mean, well, I'm tending to say something and then ask you guys, but I think the proper procedure is for me to say, Shelley, Thane, would you guys like to say anything?
I just want to repeat and thank all those in the district and the community for all the great work. I mean, it was, and I think the thing that we haven't really talked about is that, well, maybe we did last meeting, but having the evacuation center at Nordoff created a huge amount of work for district staff. And
right.
So, and we almost had to do it again.
David spent multiple hours yesterday prepping. I was on the phone as well as. Did you end up speaking to the Red Cross contact?
John,
yeah.
4 times last night. And Udo from Caltrans as well.
Right, yeah.
Well,
We were definitely in touch with Red Cross with the reality that they were anticipating possible need
And
today.
the winter isn't over, and the trees and brush are not gonna grow in the next couple of months, so.
Right.
This is it's an ongoing concern that we'll have. For
Right.
a while.
Right.
So thank you to everybody. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It makes us all look good. I kind of feel
maintenance guys too. I mean, a lot of beyond and above and beyond for sure.
Truly.
Shelley?
My only thought is I'm trying to figure out if there is a way to convey the thanks. That I think it was we as the OUSD offer a space for people to build around, but it's those people that are building that did so much of this that make OUSD look good. And from Matilaha Water, who donated, I had no idea that was happening. It's so many little pieces of people reaching out. I would really like to, as the OUSD, say thank you to all of them for their support of us and the kids. And I don't quite know what that looks like.
Someone suggested to me, and I had, sorry, whoever it was, but I had forgotten, but they had suggested that really it would be great to bring the community together at some point, just to, kind of say thanks, and here we are surviving and moving on, and maybe the district is the only organization in the valley that can effectively do that. We have space for it, we have resources that no one else has, and maybe that would be an appropriate thing for us to do in the coming month or two.
Because we're just looking to make more work.
Yeah, that's all we wanted to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I could imagine doing even something a little like late into even in the summer or something really, more that we can sort of eye towards and say, kind of an event maybe at Nordoff or something, out on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Get a rock band.
That's right.
Be cool.
I think we call that the 4th of July.
But not the 4th of July. We'll call it not the 4th of July.
But we could make it even bigger. I mean, for all the people who were in the evacuation center to go back at a time of, gladness instead of panic.
I think I just wouldn't wait till summer. I think that's too far out. I think the momentum is there sooner.
It's too bad Ojai Day already happened, because that seems really appropriate.
Right.
Well, it's just, I'm thinking of weather.
Right,
more,
weather.
you know.
Right, no, I know.
Anyway, well, work in progress.
Maybe it's something we as a board actually need to tackle, as opposed to the administrators who did all the heavy lifting earlier. So, just a
Yeah,
thought.
I mean, I think our job is really just to lean back and decide that there's an event. Whew, I'm gonna give myself some water, that was hard. No, I agree. I mean, I think I know a lot of people that are really interested in doing something like that. I think it's a great idea. And I, it's funny because as we have, as an institution, engaged with the city, one of the things that has come up a lot as we talked about our boundaries and our jurisdiction is that, the school district is a much bigger, we encompass a much bigger geography than the city, or, we really are like the logical boundaries of this community. So for us to be the ones to do something would be great.
And no one else has buildings and fields.
And I've never heard of anybody outside the boundaries of the city asking to opt in on the city, whereas we get people opting into our district, right? So
True. Nobody opts in for the
Nobody
city.
opts in.
They don't have meetings saying, we had an inter-district transfer trying to build a deck. They just wanted us to engage it and decide. Okay, so thanks again, though. Thanks, and the people in this room. I mean, Chuck
Absolutely.
and
They deserve a
David
lot of
and
thanks.
Yes.
Cheryl and Andy and Kathy and thank you guys. And please thank the people that work for you. So we move on to later school time committee update from Cheryl, I think.
Yeah, just more than anything, a reminder that we have our third meeting tomorrow in this room from 4 to 6, and of course, an audience is welcome and participation is welcome. We, on each agenda, have a chance for the public to make comments, so we encourage people to come out. Our last meeting was November 15th, which was our second meeting, and at that meeting, we almost finalized our survey. We did a little bit more through email afterward, but we have since put that put that survey out through email, and we have at Matilaha and Nordoff, 7th through 12th grade, we had 677 students take the survey. So now we have quite a lot of data. That will be our job tomorrow, to sift through that and kind of see what we can glean from it. In addition to that survey, Dave wanted to generate some discussion at Nordoff, so he did a survey with the students again. I think he only had like 160 some students take it, and then the staff, so it was nice to see that commentary as well. So again, tomorrow our big job will be going through all that survey data and then determining next steps. So we invite whoever would like to come to participate.
Do you have any idea how Dave put that second survey out to students to generate the 160?
I saw it go out in their bulletin, so I
That's
think
where
they
I
read
saw it
it.
too.
Right. So
But then there's a link, and I thought, well, on a piece of paper in the classroom, when it gets read, there's not a link. So
Right.
that means they actually went out of their way to do the survey.
yeah, I can only presume that when you're reading the bulletin, if you're the student or the teacher reading that to the class. I mean, I remember being at Nordoff reading the bulletin. If that were in the bulletin, I would probably write it up on the board and make sure it's really known for students to access it at some point.
Well, I
They
know.
probably went
and-
on their phones maybe, and
They can use any
But
device.
it means that they had to go.
Yeah.
It's not just right there.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean?
In the case of, exactly.
And I know in my daughter's class, the bulletin isn't even really
Oh.
read. It's here if you want to read it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many classes that happens in, but
Mhm.
it means that 160 people went out of their way
Absolutely.
to take that survey.
To give their comments. Right. Very good point.
Anything more on
Any
that?
questions on the later start time committee? We have more work to do.
It'll be fascinating to hear the results.
It will be fascinating. You know, at the last meeting, what was kind of fun is I had everybody go around and say what, you know, no barriers, no concerns, what would the ideal start time be? And really the majority fell in that 8 a.m. to 8:30. And you know, the committee is diverse, and so the responses were as diverse as the committee is. But the beginning start times fell between 8 and 8:30, and then certainly everybody's concern is how late we end. So my second question then we went around again was, what's your maximum end time? Like what time would you want to make sure we end school by? And 3 and 3:15 were everybody's answers. So that was interesting because the concern is how do you get the instructional minutes in if you're doing a schedule 8:15 to 3, for example. But that allowed us to turn it to creative solutions, which there are districts around us that have come up with creative solutions to do those schedules by offering things like 0 periods or seminar periods where the entire student body doesn't have to be there, but in order to count them for instructional minutes, you have to have a variety of offerings, and you have to have, I don't know what the exact calculation is, but a good portion of your students have to show up. So, you know, in the districts that I had spoken to, you know, maybe like a third of the students show up for a 0 period, and then they're able to count it as instructional minutes, but the vast majority of the students don't have to attend that period. So it gives people flexibility to have options if for those, you know, people that do want, for example, a later start time or an earlier end time. It's a good discussion.
Okay, moving on to the potential approval of board policies BP and AR 5116.1. It wasn't clear to me on this. It says if no revisions are deemed necessary, the board minutes shall nevertheless indicate that the review was conducted. Does that mean that we don't need to approve if we don't make any changes?
So, confession to make, we have not perfectly honored every letter of our board policy of all 4,000 or so pages of it. It turns out that when reviewing the organizational meeting policies and some of the things related around the election of officers, there's a mention there that states that there will be certain board policies reviewed annually. Unfortunately, we haven't done that in the past with some of these board policies. So if you actually notice in both of these policies, it does state within them that there's to be reviewed annually. So there's no changes. This is not like when we typically go through board policies of where we're actually, you know, approving a new version. There are not changes to either of these policies. They've previously been adopted by the board. We simply have stated that there's going to be a periodic review of this. And so one option would be that we looked at this, we know it exists as a policy, we're fine with it as written, and so we would simply note in the minutes that we are following what our board policies state, which is that we'll review this on an annual basis. But we also have the flexibility to discuss if you deem it necessary to you know, have us review making a change.
I don't have any comments. I was reluctant to take an action without Jane and Michael here, but considering the fact that there are no changes, it's existing board policy.
And the first 8 pages actually were changed in 2017.
Right, just changed last year.
So if you're looking for a motion, I would move to approve.
Well, before we do that, I you know, it's interesting because there has been an internal conversation, external, internal, about extracurriculars, and I think someone else mentioned this as well. You know, the policy says that extracurriculars are not graded. So I guess you know, there's part of me, I don't really have I mean, there's a lot going on. We talked about some of these issues in terms of wanting to provide our students with flexibility, but this policy says, you know, it's definitive that extracurriculars are not graded, and yet we appeared to grade extracurriculars. And I'm not just talking about sports, I'm talking about other extracurriculars. So how do we jibe reality with this policy? Does anyone know the history of how we got here?
Well, I just want to clarify, it doesn't say that no athletics will be graded, it says that
I'm
no,
talking about extracurriculars.
right.
I'm talking
which-
about like the musical.
Right, so it does, I'm just gonna stick with athletics, but I think the point will be made that also applies to musical. This policy is not saying that athletics will not be graded. What's saying is that to be deemed an extracurricular activity, that activity is not graded. So I think that maybe we're taking our mindset of athletics or the drama productions or the musical.
So they're not extracurriculars.
Correct. They don't meet the definition of extracurricular because extracurriculars are not graded. These are, in essence, a seventh period for our students in offering where they're able to get PE credit or elective credit, and they would not be deemed extracurriculars by the definition here. Now, of course, in our mind, I mean, we can all say that, typically we would, typical definition of extracurricular would include athletics outside of the school day. But again, what they're saying is that the definition of extracurricular would be that it's truly not curricular, and what we're saying is that our athletics is curricular. It's PE. It's actually a graded class that you're able to get PE credit, making progress toward graduation. Likewise, elective credit for the other extracurricular, or again, things that we might deem extracurricular, but they're not actually extracurricular according to this.
So
And if it's being
extracurricular-
graded, it's by definition curriculum.
Correct, precisely.
So our only extracurriculars would be clubs on campus? What are we talking about that are extracurricular?
Clubs would certainly be a good example of what would be extracurricular. That's a great one. Cheryl, can you think of what else?
No, I mean, I would think essentially clubs.
That's it, that's what we're talking about.
With the way we currently run our plays and athletics as graded classes, yes. There are certainly other schools that the play might not be considered a
Right.
class credit,
Well,
and
and I
so
was-
it is extracurricular.
My concern was almost the opposite issue that I think Kevin has. Athletics are, athletics saying do not take place in the classroom and are not graded. I kept thinking about part of our discussion with late start and the possibility of sixth period PE.
Mm-hmm.
That would be okay because it is.
It's a course.
Not extracurricular.
Yes.
Got it, because I was thinking that precluded us from that
Mhm.
option.
I guess I'm a little flummoxed by it. I'm flummoxed by the fact that somebody in the legislature thought that it was not only important for us to have a policy about clubs, but have us review it every year. And yet, in our context, it's sort of a big shrug. It's like, well, so reminder that we have clubs.
Well, no, I mean, this is also a co-curricular policy, and so this is also stating things that, and so it would be co-curricular. Athletics would be falling, I believe they fall into that definition, which would say that, a policy that states, going back to something that we've also discussed recently, superintendent designee may grant ineligible students a probationary period not to exceed 1 semester. This is dealing with both extracurricular and co-curricular activities. So this is still, I'm not suggesting that athletics or musical or other activities like that are totally outside the bounds of this policy. They just wouldn't be fitting into the extracurricular portion of the descriptor or the definition of that term.
But I don't really see a lot about, what is co-curricular? What does that mean? What makes it co-curricular as opposed to curricular?
Co-curricular activities are programs that may be associated with the curriculum in a regular classroom.
Right.
That's all I see
So
that it says.
how's that, I mean, what's the difference between being associated with and being the thing?
Well, again, because extra by its definition is outside of a graded context. It's outside of the actual.
No, I'm saying we're talking about co-curricular now.
Right. So I'm saying that.
But that they are graded.
Correct, and co-curricular.
Right. I'm saying, what's the difference between co-curricular and curricular?
Co-curricular and curricular.
In other words,
Right.
yeah, co-curricular is maybe associated with classroom work, and other classes are clearly associated with classroom work. I just don't really
Would
know what the difference.
co-curricular be tournaments that are not, I don't know. I'm thinking part of the athletic program, but not totally part of the athletic program? Field trips, I don't know what it is. I don't get it.
Well, we're happy to look into this policy more, make sure that you know exactly what you're reviewing, and also help Thane's concerned with having this policy be discussed without the full board present. So
I think we'll get the whole board on this.
we can have the conversation take place next week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, what co-curricular means.
Well, there is a definition on page 11. Co-curricular activities are programs that may be associated with curriculum in a regular classroom, like projects, end of year projects. What about
But isn't that part of the
citizenship?
curriculum?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what determines the difference between co-curricular and curricular. It's a very good point. They're definitely linked.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a subject on which we've been ruminating, and, so I think, Thane, you offered us an out here. Let's wait for the rest of them.
Let's take it.
Maybe re-engage this in a couple of meetings, not necessarily the next one, but, you know, kinda, I'd love a little more context.
Sure.
Like I said, what I don't really understand here is that this policy seems to be about, you know, our obligations to not discriminate and other kinds of, you know, openness obligations. But it doesn't seem commensurate with the reality of what our school district, you know, how our school district handles these things. You know, we have this sort of big issue with sports. We have things like the musical, which is clearly not co-curricular because it's not remotely associated with anything in the classroom.
Well, yeah, it is.
It's a drama class.
Yeah.
What's being
And
graded
certainly,
is a class.
there are language arts standards that are absolutely addressed through.
But that's tortured. I mean, it's not associated with anything in the class. It's a play. It's putting on a play. I mean, that's the truth. But we grade it. I mean, it's putting on a play. That's what it is.
But there's a drama course.
But you learn in sports. You learn in you learn in
the
clubs.
sports are the
I'm
same
doing
thing.
mock trial. Everyone's learning in that. Anyway?
Mock trials graded,
Co-curricular.
Is it?
I believe so.
Well, I can't grade it. I'm not authorized. So I guess that'll be interesting.
Do they
Well, then that's a good
credits for
question,
mock trial?
too.
I thought they did, cause I think Gabriel
Maybe
did
you're
when
right.
he did it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I guess Monson will have to grade everyone.
But keep in mind, this policy too, you know, it's not just about high school. There are, like, look at elementary leadership class, for example. That's not graded. It's definitely considered extracurricular. Where at a high school level, it is a class, and it does have standards and content that you cover, and so, you know.
I'm not so, like, if I were to walk into the room and to say to you, tell me how Ojai handles different kinds of events that aren't necessarily pure classroom, you would do that, as you are right now, and I would be like, okay, that sounds pretty reasonable, but what I'm confused about is like, what's this trying to accomplish? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? What is it? It seems like it's giving us some structure, but I don't know if the structure is only to be used when it happens to apply to something and it just doesn't apply to anything you're doing. It feels to me like it's toothless, and I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be.
I like the question, and I think your question takes us to a place where we ought to be in looking at what does all this mean to us. My sense is the legislature wants us to look at the discrimination element and the no fee element annually. I don't think they care about anything else. But I think where you're going is great for us to really look at that. I mean, if anybody should know what co-curricular means, it should be this group here, right? So we should figure out what that means. And I think those points are, you know, if it's curricular, you know, are we looking at these things the right way? We've almost eliminated everything because some of the clubs we're finding are graded. So what is truly extracurricular? Do we have anything that's extracurricular?
Like, and we take for granted that the definition of extracurricular as not being graded is merely a definition. But it is also possible that that is also an instruction that for certain kinds of things, they're not to be graded. I mean, we take for granted that it's merely, oh, if it's graded, therefore it is not extracurricular. Isn't it possible that the legislature is saying, you're supposed to have some extracurricular activities, and by the way, it's not supposed to have the pressure of grading. It's not supposed to be graded. It's supposed to be something different than that.
Mm-hmm. And I think those are the student-led clubs, and mock trial's not a student-led club.
Well, if you came to one of those practices, you know it sure is.
It's not supposed to be a student-led club, Kevin.
You know, but I think another question along those lines is, you know, if a kid, you know, wants to go out for a sport, they're not particularly athletic, but, you know, it's good for them. If they're being graded on that and they get a bad grade, that hurts their GPA. Why are they even doing it? I mean, it's good for them, it's great for them, we want them to do it, but why are we penalizing them for doing that?
And I would venture to guess, as kids are starting school and choosing what to do, they have no idea that it's graded and what that means.
Right.
You know, I don't think any of your mock trial kids know that they're being
Well, I'll
graded.
tell you, Greta doesn't know she's got an F right now.
I will have words with her, I promise.
I think your athletic students do because they know that it counts for PE, and so that's sort of discussed
Right.
as a showing up. But you're probably right. I don't know how many people know that mock trial is worth. I didn't even know that it was worth credit. So I'll have to
I
go
think
back.
you're probably
and check
right.
that.
I mean, but that's a reflection of the reality that there's almost, it seems like quite a lot at Nordoff is graded. You know,
Yeah.
I can't think of that many things that people do that are significant events that are not graded. I mean, and I think you're right. I think Jem did get a grade in mock trial.
Yeah. I remember it on the GPA.
Yeah. Anyway.
So I think absolutely good conversation. Perhaps this is why you guys decide to revisit this on an annual basis. And so if it's okay, I think we will hold off on having it actually take place next week, because I think that you've given us a number of good things for us to really have a firm understanding of before we bring it back, to make sure that we are equipping you with the proper information of what co-curricular and extracurricular, and understand a little
Yeah.
more of what the true statutory intent is at an ed code, as well as understanding again what flexibility we have with some of these.
And you guys
ways
may
to
end up
do.
talking to some of your cohorts at other schools, you know, who have had, you know, because obviously every superintendent presumably does this every year, so other superintendents presumably have some ideas about what this is all about, what we're supposed to be, and you may, you know, learn something, you know, from them.
Yeah.
Or they may learn from you. Probably the latter, because, you know.
Other boards may just not want to talk about it.
So the superintendent's report.
I will make this one brief. I mentioned a little bit ago when talking about Thomas Fire that, again, we know that our challenging times, you know, when we have the fire, that they can often come in threes with the fire, the economic impact, as well as with the potential damage from mudslides and rain. And obviously, we haven't talked much about it today, and so just want to mention, you know, the challenge that Cheryl and I and the leadership team faced over the past 24 hours on, you know, a repeat of a month ago, and whether or not to maintain schools open or to close them for the day. No question, what was at the focus of all of our minds was how we make sure that we provide for the safety and security of our students as well as staff. Ultimately, you know, and I thank Dave and Russ Bennett and Don Downard and Chris DeVay, who at 4 a.m. this morning were driving around town, checking roads, going to our campuses and checking the drains and making sure that we weren't having flooding issues, making sure that they were safe and ready for students to come onto campus. Of course, so long as it is safe for students to travel and we weren't having those issues, it is very important that we keep schools open, and especially the week of finals at Nordoff was a really important consideration as well. And so I've certainly heard today a little bit of a mixture of responses from the community, and so I just wanted to make sure it was known that, again, we certainly do think quite a bit about these decisions, and of course safety is our number one priority, but once we had the confidence that we knew that we were able to provide a safe environment at school, we believe the best environment for kids is in the classroom. And so we were happy to be able to have schools open. As far as the impact of the rain today, we we're reminded of a number of our classrooms that do have leaks. Unfortunately, the greatest number is at Miramani. I'm happy to look at the list of Measure J projects and see that a number of our roofs across the district that we know have these rain issues are slated for replacement or restoration this summer. Of course, it doesn't help us today or the subsequent days that we'll have this spring or winter potential rain. But we do know of these locations, and we'll make sure they are worked on this summer. So overall, though, incredible teamwork. And Chuck, I'm frankly can't believe that you're awake right now and that you're here, because I know how much time you also put in, and not just time, but energy. And I know that there was quite a few shovels being used throughout the day by many staff, and raking out leaves from drains and making sure that we again, we're able to ensure proper drainage at the campuses, because we do have the ability for our campuses to quickly flood or quickly have water back up into classrooms. And in fact, we at Miramani even today had
The sixth graders.
we got our PE minutes today for some of the sixth graders. Unfortunately, again, a number of our campuses
Now they know how to keep drains clean. This is important stuff.
Right. So we, just as with the fire last month, incredible team effort today, but especially to our custodial grounds maintenance teams that really do, like the mail service, in any weather, even last month when the fires were keeping all of us away, they were working, making sure that, things were ready for our return. And certainly today, when I was comfortably sitting at my computer and looking out at the storm, you guys were in it. And so, my gratitude to you, Chuck, and again the whole team, but just wanted to give that report as far as how the district weathered the storm. Again, other than some leaks that we already were aware of and have slated for work done this summer, we did actually quite well today with no issues in transportation either, with getting students to or from school.
Thanks. So now on to the subject of future agendas, and I have an idea, and I don't know if it needs to particularly be on the agenda, but I would like to expand this item in the future. Now that I'm president, I want to have an idea. My idea is that we have each of us give our own report. That it's not just an opportunity to talk about things that a board member wants to put on the agenda, but also board members been out in the community, board members engage certain issues during the month, usually before the meeting, and has just things that he or she wants to say. So, and I think it also encourages us to, just like we're encouraging the high school kids to come with some things, just kind of encourages us always to have something that we want to riff on. So that's what I'd like to say, and I will begin with this. I feel like the momentum from the district's reaction to the fires is great and amazing. And one of the things I think we saw was at so many levels where it's not completely obvious. The district said yes, just yes, yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can accommodate that. Yes, we can make that work. And I think that people that as a district, I think we're really have great momentum, and I think the leadership, both Cheryl and Andy, you guys are really, I feel it. I feel that you guys are both yes people, and I think that's really important. I mean, it really comes from the top. Yeah, we can't always say yes. Not every idea is a good one, but if your first reaction to things that aren't necessarily completely intuitive is like, yeah, maybe that will work. Yeah, maybe, especially in a community as small as ours. I think what we saw in these multiple issues that have happened over the last year, and we all have talked about it, the district really is the community. Whether your kids go to even private school, you still really, you're interacting with Matilaha and Nordhoff and in our facilities and our employees, and the overwhelming number of kids are all part of this community. So keep it up. Great work. And you guys as well, of course, we said it.
Not every idea is a good idea.
I'm not saying it.
I think that's a great idea.
With that said, we hate your idea. It's not feasible.
You just want these, meetings to go on and on and on, huh, Kevin?
Moving on to the consent calendar. What do we have there? Do we have this certificated and classified human resources report? Is there anything that need to be pulled out, talked about? No. Consent calendar?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. I think that's the end of our meeting, and I'm gonna use the
Hey, there
gavel.
we go.